Hi, welcome to Bjorn Does Movies. I'm Bjorn and I do movies. And today I am starting a new writing series. As you can see, I am in the Wild West. We're really there. The effect is extremely convincing, and that's because we're in the Wild West. I used a time machine, not a green screen. Don't believe anyone or anything that tells you that I used a green screen, because that's just patently false. So, as you may have guessed from the titles, I am writing a Deadlands TV series. Now, you might be asking yourself one of many questions. I would assume the first question is, what is Deadlands? I bet a lot of you watching this have never heard of this. Or if you have, it's like in a passing familiarity, like, oh, yeah, it's that, like, tabletop game. I've heard of that, kinda. Well, I'm here today to tell you about Deadlands, why it's awesome, and why I would think it could be the best like movie franchise or TV franchise if it was ever adapted well. So, first questions first. What is Deadlands? Deadlands is a tabletop role-playing game, i.e. Dungeons and Dragons or Mutants and Masterminds. The gimmick of the game is that it is set in the Wild West, but not the West you knew. It's a version of the Wild West that's weird, different, not quite right. Some could even call it the Weird West, as I think the game was actually called at one point, but now it's called Deadlands, and that's what we're going to stick to. So, for this section, I'm going to briefly go over some of the lore of Deadlands, why I think it's so cool, and then I'll talk about the characters I plan to use in my script. For those watching right now, please remember to like and subscribe, leave a comment after this, tell me what you think. It really helps the channel, so if you guys wouldn't mind doing that, that would be awesome, and I would appreciate it a lot. Okay, so Deadlands is set in an alternate history version of the Civil War in the Wild West. It starts in this time period. Forgot to look it up, forgive me. Oh my god, oh good lord, a giant dog has invaded the West. How did he get all the way out to this couch in the middle of the Wild West? And there's some really cool historical lore. The basic conceit of Deadlands is the Wild West was the same until something called the Reckoning happened. And what was the Reckoning? You don't know, and you won't find out until you watch the script. But the Reckoning's effects were very clear. Evil was unleashed across the Wild West. Of all sorts, you've got monsters, wendigos, creatures, strange, bizarre animals, magic powers, demons, everything you can imagine in the Wild West. And to counterbalance that, sort of anti-demonic religious movements have popped up around the West as well. In addition to this, a giant earthquake has left California a ruin. Woo! Yeah, baby! California's a ruin. That's what it's all about. Joking aside, California is like a fractured ruin because of a giant earthquake, which basically ripped apart the land and made it this mess of mesas filled in with water, which they call the maze. And in the aftermath of the maze ripping apart California, two things happened. Number one, a city of survivors led by a man named Ezekiel Grimm, we'll come back to him, popped up and built a city called the City of Lost Angels. And this city is very, very relevant to my script, and about 3 of the 6 to 8 episodes I plan on writing are set there. The maze is home to all sorts of strange things. I won't go into any details on a lot of them, but I'll bring up some of my favorites, which include giant sea serpents called maze dragons. That's pretty awesome. There's some other things too. We'll get to visit the maze quite a bit in my script. One other thing happened as a consequence of this big earthquake and the destruction of California. Woo! Okay, last time I swear, I won't run that joke into the ground. Ghost rock appeared in the cracked ruins of the Mesa of California. Now, ghost rock is like a magic kind of coal. And I don't know exactly what it is because it does the book. Again, the details of this series are fairly sparse. Doesn't exactly state what exactly it is. All we know is that it has unusual effects, including the ability to create unusual steampunkish machinery. Other more magical uses for it too have been discovered. And basically this stuff is as valuable as gold. And it started the second California gold rush equivalently. People are racing to get to this ghost rock, which is out in the middle of the desert. And Ezekiel Grimm, the leader of this city called the City of Los Angeles, has a big chokehold on it. Now let's go back to the Civil War, because unfortunately for the North, in the Deadlands universe, the South got their hands on the Ghost Rock first, and they used it to make all sorts of strange machinery and weapons which they used to destroy the North. The North is basically all but lost and has been pushed back up, but now they've started to get their own Ghost Rock weapons, and they are becoming a more formidable foe every day. And the Civil War will play a backdrop to the series. I'm not really going to focus on it because my series is going to be a heist story, a good old-fashioned Western heist story. So, let's go over some of these characters, shall we? And some of the lore of those characters' backgrounds. Our first character goes by the name of John Weber, and he's about as close to protagonist as you're going to get in this series. John Weber is what is called in the books a huckster, and what I'm calling a gambler, because a gambler just makes more sense with what it is. Now, what is a huckster slash gambler, you might be asking? Well, this is the thing that turned me on to Deadlands. This is the coolest idea for a magic class in a game I've ever seen. And its execution in a TV show is just as cool. A huckster is basically a man who has made a deal with the devil, so to say. But they do it specifically through games, i.e. playing cards. A huckster makes a deal with the devil and signs away his soul in exchange for gambling with it. So every time he draws a card, he could either lose his soul or he could get access to powerful demonic magic. So every time a huckster draws a card, there's a chance that they could lose it all. In my series, I'm going to tweak it up a bit. In the actual Deadlands lore, you play like a hand of poker against the demons, basically. That's really convoluted and hard to show in a TV show, unfortunately. So we're going to really simplify this, just for the simplicity of explaining it to a general audience. And the way we're going to do that is by making it a face game. If you draw an ace, you get really powerful magic. But if you draw a joker, you lose one of your three lives, basically. If you draw 3 jokers, you lose your soul and die almost immediately on the spot. Our protagonist learned how to draw these cards the same way everyone did, from a book, specifically that book. And it's basically an allegory for how to make contact and set up a contract with a demon through the guise of playing cards. We're not really going to go too much into it, but John gets his hands on this book in the opening scene of the show, and I'll just save the details of that for that scene. And we're going to follow him where he is now in the main event of my show, where he's fighting in Kansas. Now, for those who don't know, during Bleeding Kansas, when the hostilities between the North and the South temporarily came to an end, Kansas continued to fight like guerrilla style against each other, and it was pretty horrible. I'm not going to go too much into the historical details of that, but John is currently fighting that war because it's continued to go on. Because the North and the South have basically gone into this horrible war, and it went on longer than it did in real life. Kansas's like bleeding war has just gone on longer. So in the main event of my book, John is a sellsword, basically. He is a mercenary. I don't know if he's fighting for the North or the South. When I write the script, I'll flesh that out, but it doesn't really matter. He's a sellsword. He's not in it for any personal belief. In fact, he's gone there to sort of forget his woes. He's recently had a very big and very bad, messy breakup with another character in this series, and he's just trying to forget it. Unfortunately for John, he drew a wrong card, and now he's only down to 1 more joker. This is a really cool character. The idea of drawing cards to get magic is super neat, and I'll get more into the villains later to explain sort of where he fits in with this world. Our second character, Christine Moon. She's the daughter of 2 wealthy French nobles who have moved to the U.S., specifically California. You can see where this is going already. They've moved there, and they'd lost almost all their fortune, but still had a lot of their wealth and material goods, and they used what they had to get a start in California, hoping to find gold, like everyone else did, so they could regain their lost fortune. And the Moons were, again, a very old French noble family. Unfortunately for them, it was not going to work out because the earthquake of '68 happened. California was ripped apart, and Christine Moon's mother and father died before her eyes. And in the darkness of the earthquake, she sees the truth. She sees the dark evil behind the events. She, like a lot of people who live in the in-between lands called the Deadlands, or the Weird West, depending on what you want to call it, knows that evil has been unleashed in the United States, and that bad things are on the horizon. But most specifically, Christine Moon has one very specific goal. She wants to regain access to her family's lost heirloom, a gem called the Heart of Darkness. And this gem has been in her family for generations, and her mother always said it had magic powers, that it could do all sorts of things. And when her mother died, it was lost. And Christine Moon has always wanted to find it, but she knows that it was lost somewhere in the maze, until she read a rather interesting news article, which will be the first scene with her. And that article says that a man by the name of Ezekiel Grimm, I mentioned him earlier, he's the leader of the Lost Angels, and he is currently living in the city of the Lost Angels in the maze, has been miraculously feeding his people. The people there have been getting food and all sorts of other things, and he's been performing miracles before their eyes. And she thinks that this can only be caused by one thing, the heart of darkness, which she believes he has. So the broad stroke story of my script is Christine Moon has gotten back in touch with her ex-lover, John Weber. They were childhood friends, you could say. After the deaths of both of their parents, respectively, they met up in a freak accident and sort of stuck together until Christine left John. Now, let's just say there's some bad blood there and some personal issues that really need to be worked out between them, which is great for juicy drama. She needs him because he has card powers that she can't get anywhere else. And he needs her because he's still in love with her and wants to make it work. So they're sort of an odd couple. Except they're not alone, because they're going to be joined by tertiary characters and villains. The first most obvious villain, again, is Ezekiel Grimm. There's a lot to this guy, but I'm going to not really bring any of it up. You can kind of find out about him as we go into the script. All you need to know is what I've said so far. He led a group of people, founded a city. He performs all sorts of miracles. Recently, he banished a bunch of demons away when they attacked the city. And by all accounts, he's a man of God. A very, 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 very radical man of God. And his followers are even more radical. The second main villains for this series are what are called guardian angels. These are Ezekiel Grimm's followers, his closest followers. And they go out into the west and kill devil worshippers, or anyone they find to be too sinful to be left alive. These guys act within no jurisdiction, and people are scared of them because, again, they perform miracles and seem to be able to do some sort of magic. Unlike the dark card magic, they seem to get their magic from God. And unfortunately, they've been turned on to our main characters and are hunting them. They aren't aware, however, that they're planning to rob Ezekiel of his stone. A lot of the series is going to be set in Tombstone and then the city of Lost Angels. Tombstone being a real city, by the way. You can look it up. There's a lot of really cool history about it. And there are going to be some tertiary characters we're going to mention there. There's a lot of real-life people, like Wyatt Earp in Deadlands. I'm not really going to touch them. There's a lot of baggage that comes with real-life characters and making sure you get their real history right and their actual personality. You can't really mold them to make them work in a story without like ruining the actual historical precedent behind them. So I'm going to try to stay away from them. Maybe we'll get a few cameos, and maybe I'll build them into the season 2 I'm planning to write for this if I ever get around to it. There's Lacey O'Malley, who of course is the writer of the newspaper I mentioned earlier. He's going to be relevant because our characters will be seeking some of the information published in that newspaper, and they'll wind up meeting up with him. Another character is William Ghost Eye Morrison. Again, these are all made-up characters that I've created. William Ghost Eye Morrison is a guide who takes people through the Deadlands that run between Tombstone and the Maze. A lot of unreputable folk run people back and forth there, much like running people over the border nowadays. If you don't pick the right sort, then your life will end up dead in the ditch and all your money taken. Luckily for our heroes, William Morrison is sort of the right sort. He has one eye and an eye patch and is a rather unusual hard man who spent more years in the desert than most. And unlike most, he knows just how real the supernatural threats of the Weird West are. He's seen a lot of stuff, and he has a lot of secrets. I really like this guy. He'll be sticking around for a few episodes, so you can look forward to him and some of his stuff. And that's really all I have to say about the characters. I don't want to go too far into it because I'll spoil stuff, and I'll have the first episode out pretty quickly. I'm basically done with the script, and once I'm done with it, I'll have the next video out because I just have to record it. So I can look forward to that pretty soon. This is a pretty big departure from my last video, which was the Suicide Squad. Deadlands is a lot more big and complicated, and it's unknown to a lot of people, so I have to do a lot of groundwork setting up the lore and explaining what's going on in it. But that being said, this series is spectacular. If you've never heard of Deadlands or anything, pick up a copy of the handbook, the game handbook, and give it a try. I know there's lots of people who probably be willing to run a campaign. If you want to run your own campaign, give this game a shot, because it is awesome. There's a lot of secrets in the world, and also a lot of spoilers. So if you want to watch my series knowing nothing about Deadlands and being surprised by every twist or reveal, then maybe don't read the Marshall section, the bit about, like, that spoils things. But beyond that, go into this world, because it is so cool, and it's way too underground for how neat it is. It breaks my heart to see how underrated this series is, because it's that good. So I'm going to be putting a lot of love and passion to this, and I hope to tell a story that's just as shocking and surprising as anything else I've done in this thing. My basic outline, I think this is better than my Suicide Squad series a lot. I think it's a lot better, and I think it's a lot more interesting. So you guys can look forward to that. It'll be up pretty quickly. Again, please remember to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. I'll get more into some of the characters that will appear later. I might do like a more upcoming characters at like the halfway point, because I didn't mention every character here, just the characters that are in the first couple of episodes. So, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go have a drink at that there saloon over there. And thank you for watching. Okay. You're breaking the immersion, Asher. You can't be in the video because it breaks the immersion that I'm in the Wild West, because there were no German Shepherds in the Wild West. That was in Germany. Alright? Golly. Alright, I'll see y'all in the next one. Let me just mosey on over to my couch over here and we can get started. Hi, welcome back to Bjorn Does Movies. This is episode 2 of my Deadlands series. I've actually written the first episode's script, so we're going to be going over that here. And I'll be giving out the dialogue and whatnot. And so yeah, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. If you have any feedback on how the format could be improved or any issues you have with my story. God, that dog. Let me know and I'll implement them in the future. My first piece of feedback is no more dog jumping into the video in the middle of it. It was cute the first time, but now it's irritating. And I have to edit all of the time it comes in out. Like I'm probably gonna end up making a whole blooper reel of my dog interrupting this thing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right into the script. And I'll be showing it on screen, so if you want to read along at home, because I might paraphrase some dialogue, go right ahead. You can just pause the video and take a gander. We're still using them Old Western speak. I am calling episode 1 The Gambler, and it's going to start with some narration over the desert. We'll see like the sun hanging high, you know, classic Western imagery, and we'll hear the narrator say, "The West ain't what it used to be. Some say it was the blood spilled by war, or magic from the Indians' old gods. Maybe it was an evil that was always there, awakened at last. Whatever caused it, the folk who live in the fringes between the cities that make up the Deadlands know the truth. The weird has infected the West, and it'll never be the same again." We're going to open on John Weber, the character I mentioned in my introduction. He's a young boy here, maybe 11 or 12, and we'll see that he has tears rolling down his face. He stares at his mother, who's inside their modest home. Her name is Cassandra Weber, and she's like 39. She's beautiful with blonde hair, blue eyes, classic, you know, American Southern belle. She wears a floral dress, and we can see fear and panic in her eyes. We hear little John say, "I don't want you to go, Mama." His mother's gonna say, "It's going to be fine, John. We just have to sort this out. Stay in the house and stay quiet. Be my little brave man." She's gonna ruffle his hair, then leave the house. John creeps to the wall where there's a crack in the wood. He peers through. We can see his mother and his father, who I'm named Richard here, standing together. And then we'll see the gambler. He's a young man, maybe 25, and he stands 20 feet from them. He's a debt enforcer. He's wearing a nice suit and has revolvers at his waist. We can see them because he's pulled back his suit. He plays with a deck of cards in his hand. Cassandra's going to say, "We just need more time. We're honest folk. We'll pay you back." The gambler's going to say, "You said that 4 months ago. The time for waiting is over. My boss has sent me to collect, one way or another. So can you pay?" Richard's going to say, "We just need more time. Please have mercy." "More time," the gambler says. "You keep saying that. And what's going to change this time? Where's this money going to come from that it hasn't in 4 months? I'll tell you what. Where's that boy of yours?" We're going to hear John let out a small gasp as he watches through the wood. His father's going to reach for the gun at his waist. He's too slow. The gambler draws a card, and we see it's the King of Hearts. The boy's father is surrounded by green light, and when it vanishes, the man is little more than a shriveled corpse. We cut to the boy inside the house. He's starting to cry even more now. He stands up and looks at the rifle mounted on the wall. We see him carefully pull it off the shelf. As he does, we hear a gunshot from outside. We cut to the gambler. He stands over the 2 bodies of John's parents and puts away his card. He says, "Luck didn't favor you today, for only the dead to hear." The camera pans and we see the boy standing behind him, holding a rifle towards him. The gambler stops when he notices and turns around. "Whoa, boy, put that down before you hurt somebody." John holds strong, though. We can see the gun is shaking. "You hurt my mama," he says. The gambler nods his head. "That I did, and I'll hurt you too if you don't put that down." We see that he's drawing a card at his side. Just before we can see what the face is, we cut to the boy. His face grows hard, and he fires the rifle. The gambler falls to the floor with a gunshot wound to the heart. We zoom in on the kid's face as tears start to fall. He lets the gun fall to his side, then runs to his mother. She's already dead. He wails and hugs her dead body. After a moment, he leaves her and carefully examines the dead gambler. He finds the card drawn into the man's hand. It's a joker, which is now sprayed with blood. As he looks through the man's pockets, he finds a little book titled Hoyle's Book of Games. We're going to cut to the busy streets of Old Chicago. We see loads of people moving through the busy streets. We see Christine Moon, 27, this is the other main character I mentioned in my intro, work her way through the crowd. She wears a red dress that highlights her dark black hair. Her green eyes are drawn to a newspaper cart. We see that they have copies of the Tombstone epitaph. The headline reads, "Dark Magic or God? The Truth Behind the Lost Angels." She grows excited and quickly buys the paper. We see her read it as a smile grows across her face. We're going to cut to the inside of a sparse apartment. This is a new character. I would have put him in my intro, but I hadn't quite finished developing what I wanted him to be. He went through several iterations. The one I landed on is a Japanese immigrant and quasi-father figure to Christine. He is from Japan, and he immigrated to California and came into the service of Christine's noble parents. We're going to see him sitting inside of the apartment. He's an older man, 44, and he's scarred from war. We can see him cleaning a katana as he sits in a wooden chair. We can also see that he's well muscled and is clearly fought. He polishes the blade until it shines, and we can see his reflection. He feels the kanji that are inscribed at the base of the blade with his fingers. I'll say that the symbols translate to bravery and honor. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and we see Christine Moon holding a newspaper in hand.
"What is it?" Hitoshi asks. "The Tombstone epitaph," Christine replies. "They published a story about the lost angels. They say they used a stone in their rituals. It's the heart of darkness. It has to be."
Hitoshi smiles.
"We were right. He must have used the stone to feed his people. It explains a lot."
Christine says,
"We have to go to Tombstone and speak to the author. If we're right about this, and the Lost Angels do have the heart of darkness, then we have to go to the city of Lost Angels and reclaim my family's heirloom."
Hitoshi says, "You and me, we can't do this thing alone. The stories they tell of the guardian angels. Magic is something a blade can't cut, and a bullet cannot pierce. Only magic can deal with magic." He looks at her knowingly. "No, not him. I can't do that," Christine says. "Then you can't reclaim your birthright. Men like Grimm are not the sort you fight lightly. That gambler, as unreputable as he is, has skills we would need for this." Christine shakes her head. "I broke his heart, Hitoshi. I wouldn't even be able to look at him. We'll find someone else." Hitoshi says, "Even if there was someone else, who would do it? It's near suicide, Christine." He turns to her and says, "We need some kind of suicide squad." I'm fucking kidding, he doesn't say that. He actually says it's near suicide, Christine, and Christine replies, "And you think he will?" Hitoshi's gonna say, "He's in love with you. Love makes men do strange things." Christine's gonna say, "And if he says no?" Hitoshi says, "Then we'll figure it out. For all his faults, he never left you in danger. Why would he change now? Do you even know where he is?" Christine says, "Oh, Christ. I have a few ideas. Last I heard, he was fighting in Kansas, the fool. I don't even know if he's still alive." We're going to cut to a Kansas battlefield, and it's time for a new segment in this show. Welcome to History Lessons with Bjorn. I'm here to talk to you about the Civil War. I know you tuned into this video for a dumb cowboy movie, but we're going to briefly teach you about the Civil War. During the latter half of the Civil War, trench warfare developed in response to the artillery fire and the rapid-fire machine guns that had been developed at the time, called the Gatling gun. The trenches allowed them to hide from these new weapons, and trenches briefly popped up near the very end of the war. But the Confederacy was already losing, so the trenches didn't stick around long. For those who were really paying attention to history at the time, though, it was a great precursor to what would become World War I. Horrible, horrible trench warfare. So I propose that in the universe of Deadlands, where the Civil War kept going for many, many years after it was supposed to have ended, trench warfare would become the norm. All of this factors in because what we're going to be seeing is a trench warfare, and I wanted to briefly explain why I made the decision to include trench warfare instead of a civil war. That's all. That's the end of the history lesson. Alright, y'all. This is going to be on the test tomorrow, so don't forget to study. So we're going to cut to a Kansas battlefield. We'll see men with rifles killing each other around trenches, like firing across no man's land. But we can see that there's clearly a push from the Confederacy into Union territory. They're making a run for the trenches, as happened. We're going to pan through the chaos until we find John Weber. He's now an adult. We'll say like 26 or 25. He's currently with two allies in the trench. We'll see Nicholas is a young soldier fighting for the Union. He's got a slim build and wears glasses. And Harry, who is barely old enough to be fighting in the war. He's like 19. He has a baby face, and most would call him handsome. John holds a revolver in his hand. An enemy soldier quickly bails over the top of the trench, and John quickly turns and shoots him in the chest. Blood sprays against the walls of the trench. John's going to say, "This is a goddamn mess. The trench is going to get overwhelmed. We got to get the hell out of here." An artillery shot is going to hit the trench just down from them, causing an explosion. We'll see that it kills people. Nicholas is going to say, "And how do you propose we do that?" Harry's going to say, "We could make a run for it." And Nicholas is going to say, "That'd be suicide. You saw the Gatling gun on the ridge. It would pick us apart." John's going to say, "I have an idea. When I say so, run for the tree line. It won't be long, so run fast." And Harry's going to say, "We'll do it. Are you going to draw the cards?" John's going to say, "That's the idea." We'll see him pull out a deck of cards. He's going to draw one. We'll see that it's an ace of hearts. John is going to let out a triumphant laugh as we see the card begin to grow green. John's going to yell, "Now!" They bail over the trench just as a fireball erupts from the card and hits the man on the Gatling gun. We'll say it like roasts him alive and kills him. We'll follow the 3 men as they desperately try to run to the forest. As they get close, we see someone else manning the Gatling gun. He begins to crank it and bullets start spraying around our heroes. The young Harry gets hit and falls to the ground. He starts to scream. We see that the Gatling gun has to reload. John runs and grabs Harry, just barely managing to drag him into the tree line before the gunfire picks back up. He carries Harry a bit further. Once they're safely past the gun line, they stop. Nicholas looks over the injuries and says, "It's bad." He leans in close to whisper in John's ear. He says, "He's not going to survive it." John's going to say, "No, he'll live." He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a card again. He draws one, and we see it's a Joker. It's got blood splatter from the opening scene, letting the audience who's watching at home and doesn't have access to the script sort of know that this is the same character as the little boy. John's going to say, "Oh." Blood's going to begin to run from his nose and eyes, and he falls over, and the screen goes black. We're going to cut to a Chicago train station. We'll see Hitoshi there. He'll say, "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you? Kansas is a dangerous place these days." Christine's going to flash him a quick smile. "I'm a dangerous woman. John was never too fond of you. I think this will go over better if it's just me." Hitoshi says, 3 weeks. If you're not in Tombstone, I'll come looking." Christine will say, "I'll be fine. I'll meet you there." She gets on the train. We see her take a seat and pull out a sewn family crest, like a little yarn thing. It'll depict a full moon with a purple gem at its center. She turns it over in her hand and holds it close to her chest. We're going to cut to a hospital. The camera will pan past tons of injured soldiers laying on beds. Some moan and others cry. We'll see John laying on a hospital bed at last. He opens his eyes and turns to see a nurse standing next to another patient. Through cracked lips, he whispers, "Water." The nurse is going to go, "Oh my God, you're awake." She's going to grab him water and we'll see him drink it. She's going to say, "I'll go fetch the doctor. He'll want to talk to you." We'll cut to the doctor examining John. He steps away and removes his leather gloves. The doctor says, "Well, for being asleep for nearly a month, you're doing good. No muscle atrophy, no loss of weight. Honestly, I don't know what to make of you." John's going to say shakily, "Some things go beyond explanation. Call it supernatural, Doc." Doctor's going to say, "We try to avoid answers like that, but every once in a while you get an act from God. You have a friend waiting for you. Do you feel up to it?" John's going to say that you can send him in. We'll see Nicholas enter the room. The first thing John's going to ask is, "Harry?" Nicholas will say, "Dead. Didn't last 5 minutes." John's going to shake his head and say, "I feared as much. Damn my luck, he was just a boy." Nicholas will say, "They buried him with honor." "What happened? You just dropped like a dead man." John will say that he drew a Joker for the second time. Once more and he'll finally go to hell. Then he'll ask where he is. Nicholas is going to say, "You've been asleep for damn near a month. No one could make heads or tails of it. 2 days ago we moved you to the city. War's over. They've signed a ceasefire. They say this one's going to last, so we can go home." John's going to say that he doesn't have a home. Nicholas is going to say that he can change that. He'll say that he knows a friend who has an apartment. "I'll make sure he gives it to you cheap." John thanks him and says that he owes him. Nicholas replies that he actually owes John his life because John saved him with those magic cards of his, that he won't soon forget it. And he helps John to leave the hospital. We're going to cut to John getting a new apartment. I'm going to breeze over this script because basically it's uneventful. John just thanks Nicholas for getting his new apartment. You guys can pause and read this dialogue if you really care about it. John briefly says that he doesn't know what to do without the fight, as he's been distracting himself with it. And Nicholas just says that he needs to live his life and try to be happy. The most notable thing that happens in this is that when he's left alone in the room, he pulls out the Joker and studies the blood splatter on it. We're going to cut to his eyes and see the Joker reflected there before we cut away to the Kansas train station. We'll see Christine exit the train. People shuffle around her as she makes her way to an information broker. Sometimes at these old train stations, they used to have a guy
whose job is literally to help you find a place to stay or to do like other various things. Like you might know people you're looking for, and he would literally just sit at the train station and help you. I'm calling him an information broker. I don't know what they were actually called, but it's a real thing. Christine's going to ask him if he knows where to find a man by the name of John Weber. Say that he fought in the war and that she was told he was here. The information broker will say, if your man's Union, you'll find him at Charlie's. If not, you'll find someone who knows where he is. All the military types go to that place. We're going to cut to Charlie's bar. We'll see John at a table with Nicholas. He's growing a small beard. This will show us that time has passed since the last scene. I'd say about a month or two since the last time we saw John in the apartment. Sorry for all the time skips, folks. It's going to sort of iron out here. John's going to tell Nicholas that he should go for it. She's a lovely woman. Nicholas will say, I'll be leaving, John. That is if she says yes. John jokes and says, she'll say yes. They have some fun, witty dialogue here. And then Nicholas asks him if he has someone special and that he worries about John being all alone in the city. John says, maybe once. I think women are about the furthest thing from my mind. I'll be fine, Nick. I've been alone before. Nicholas is going to say, you need somebody, John. The lonely sort doesn't last long in this world. I know it for a fact. John's going to say that he's always liked solitude. Quiet is good for a man. Christine's going to enter the bar, and John is going to notice her almost immediately. He's going to make a pained face. Nick is going to notice. He'll say, who's she? John's going to say, trouble. Christine spots John and makes her way to the table. She takes his seat. She says, John, it's good to see you. John's going to ask her what she wants. Christine's going to say, I want you to come with me to Tombstone. John's going to turn to face Nick and say, leave us, Nick. And Nicholas is going to say, all right, I'll head out for the night. It was nice to meet you, ma'am. John. He leaves the bar. John's going to say, Tombstone, huh? Christine, you must think I'm a fool. She's going to grow flustered and say, I'm not going to California. The newspaper in Tombstone, the Tombstone epitaph. They published a story about the truth of the lost angels. They wrote that they used some kind of supernatural ritual to perform miracles. The best part is they say they use a magic gem to do it. I just want to talk to the man who wrote it. John's going to say, I know the paper. Last week they wrote about killer tumbleweeds roaming the desert. It's sensationalist bullshit. Christine's going to say, you can't know that for sure. What if it's true? John's going to say, let's say he tells you what you think he's going to tell you. What then? You turn around and come home? You're obsessed with that damn rock. Let it go, Christine, before it gets you killed. Christine sort of laughs and says, that's rich from you. I heard stories of you drawing magic cards all the way in Chicago. You're out here fighting in Kansas, drawing cards like there's no risk. For what? Are you trying to die? You already drew one, Joker. John's going to cut her off and say, 2. I drew another 2 months back. She's going to say, God, John, 2? You'll die if you draw another. And he'll say, and you care if I die? At this point, they're just having a full-on argument. Christine will say, of course I care. And John will say, well, you have a funny way of showing it. You left me, Christine. Now you come back and tell me you want me to go with you to Tombstone? I see the truth of it. You want a bodyguard to get you to the maze. You want my cards to keep you in check. Don't lie to me. Christine's going to say, I shouldn't have left you the way I did. It was wrong. John's going to say, yeah, no shit. Too little, too late. If you must know, I'm not drawing cards anymore, so I'm no use to you anyway. Find another bodyguard. Christine starts to say, John, and he cuts her off. Save it. I'm not interested. If you still care for me even a bit, listen here. You know better than most what sort of place the maze is. You could say you're only going to Tombstone, but you and I both know the truth. If you try to enter the city of the Lost Angels, you'll die for that, Jim. Christine says, so be it. It was good to see you, John. Be careful. I don't want to hear you died. If you change your mind, I'll be in town for a few days. I'm staying at the Thirsty Horse Inn. She stands up and leaves the bar. And we see John pull out a necklace. He's got a glass vial and at its center is a silver bullet. He sort of fingers it. He takes a shot of whiskey and says, damn it all. And then he stands up. We're going to cut to Nicholas's apartment. We'll see him opening it up with a key and walking inside. As he shuts the door, we see a man standing there. Nick walks into the apartment unaware of their presence. As he does, we pan around and see 2 guardian angels standing behind them. They wear red robes and large brimmed hats which are also red. They also wear red tinted glasses. They have a bit of a red thing going on. First, the guardian angel is going to ask, Nicholas Goldman, you led the 32nd Union Infantry. You are that Nicholas Goldman, aren't you not? Nick is going to jump out of his skin and turn. When he sees them, he becomes paralyzed with fear. He's going to say, I am. Who are you, and how did you get into my apartment? The guardian angel is going to say, "We are men of God. We've seen his hand work wonders on the earth. You see, God has sent us here today. His will has led us to you, so that you can help us find a devil worshiper, a man who gambles his soul with a deck of cards." Nick is going to say, "I don't know anything about that." And the guardian angel is going to retort with, "We've heard otherwise. Stories spread, and what I've heard is that your soldiers don't die like the others do. I've heard other things too. Darker things." Nick is going to say, "We've got God on our side. He tends us well." The guardian angel is going to let out a faint chuckle. "That's funny because God whispers in my ear, and he tells me that you lie. We will have the answer out of you one way or another." The second angel is going to rush forward and grab Nick, holding him down. The first is going to pull a jar from his bag. It's filled with muddy water. Inside, we can see something stirring. "Have you heard of a tummy twister?" the first angel asks. "It's a silly name for a nasty creature. It's a foul new thing that's come with all the rest. A creature of the devil, if ever there was. It lives in stagnant pond water and waits for an unassuming man to drink it. Once inside a man's stomach, it rips through him and attaches itself to his spine. Needless to say, you wouldn't like the rest." These are straight out of the game. I love their name. It's silly. But the monster itself is really not silly. If curiosity gets the better of you, look up what these things actually do to people. It's super gnarly, and I really like it. He carefully opens the lid, and using a pair of tongs, fishes out the tummy twister. It's a nasty, flailing creature that looks like a hybrid of a bug and an octopus. Hair-like spines run up and down its tentacles. I kind of imagine this thing looking like a more menacing version of a brittle star. It's a type of starfish. If you've never seen one, it looks like this. Just to give you something to picture. The Lost Angel's going to say, "I'll ask you once more. A man with cards that uses dark magic. Do you know where we can find him?" Nick is going to hold strong. The guardian angel smirks. He lowers the creature until its tentacles begin to caress Nick's lips. Nick cracks. "It's not me. Please, dear God, it's John. John Weber. He's the one." The guardian angel is going to ask, "Where is he?" And Nick is going to say, "A woman came for him. She wanted to take him to Tombstone." The guardian angel is going to say, "Tombstone. That is a godless place. Where does this gambler live?" Nick is going to give his address. Guardian angel is going to say, "Thank you for your honesty." He's going to put the tummy twister back in the jar and screw the lid on. He puts it back in his bag and comes out with a knife. Nicholas is going to begin to panic again. "I gave him up. Just leave." The guardian angel is going to say, "You sat by and let a devil worshipper do his craft. You have sinned and God has judged you guilty." Nicholas is going to yell, "No!" The guardian angel is going to hit Nick and he's going to pass out. The second guardian angel will say, "I'll handle him, then watch the train station. You take the house." The first guardian angel is going to reply, "As you say, for the shepherd," to which the second will say, "For the flock." We're going to cut back to John. He walks down a slightly busy street. We see a sign that says Cherry Street, which is his address, and we realize he's heading home. As he approaches his apartment, he sees one of the lost angels standing out front. He's going to say, "Hell," under his breath. He's going to turn away and vanish into the crowd. We're going to cut to Christine sitting in a hotel room. We'll see that she's playing with her little moon sigil again. There's a loud knock at the door and she quickly hides it and stands. She opens the door and we see John. She's going to say, "So, you decided to come after all. That didn't take long." John isn't playful. "Christine, what the hell did you do?" he says. Christine's going to say, "I don't know what you're talking about." And John's going to say, "There was a lost angel watching my place." Christine's going to say, "What? Are you sure?" To which John will say, "How many guys do you know who walk around in red robes? He was an angel, I'm sure." Christine's going to curse, and then we'll see her pick up her rifle and look out the window. She doesn't see anything. "They're not here." John says, "Not yet. They'll be coming. We've got to go. It won't take them long to find you." She's going to say, "Go where?" John's going to say, "Train station. We need to get as far from here as possible." Christine's going to say, "Tombstone. We'll go to Tombstone." John's going to say, "Fine. You shouldn't mess with these guys. They're bad news. You've kicked the hornet's nest." Christine's going to say, "Give me 5 minutes to pack her things." John will tell her to be quick. We'll cut to them in the streets as they hurry to the train station. Suddenly, we'll see John stop and let out like a moan of grief, and we'll pan around and see Nicholas hanging from a building. He's got a noose around his neck, and a bloody cross has been carved into his chest. Blood drips from his wounds onto the street. John snarls and pulls a knife from his sheath. Christine grabs his arm and says, "No." John says, "What?" And she'll say, "It's a trap." We'll see John stare at the corpse. "I can't leave him up there. That man saved my life." Christine's going to say, "I know, John. He's bait for you. It could be booby-trapped, or worse. They wouldn't have killed him if they were looking for me. They came for you. They know you wouldn't leave him up there." Why? John asks. Because of what you are. Because you draw the cards. If I heard stories of you all the way in Chicago, they must have heard them too. I've been careless, John says. He was a good man. Had a woman he was going to marry. He shouldn't die like this. What if she finds him like that? Gesturing to the corpse. Christine's going to say, John, I'm sorry, but we don't have time. We've got to get to the train station. They'll be looking for you. John's going to sigh and put away his knife. Then he'll turn to her and say, I'm going to kill the man who did that. We'll see Christine pull him away, and they start to hurry. We'll see them arrive at the train station. It's surprisingly empty. We can see it on their face that it concerns them. They approach the ticket desk, and we hear a voice from behind them. It's the first guardian angel. He says, You missed the train to Tombstone. It's left early, I'm afraid. They were warned of a devil. You are the gambler, are you not? I can see the evil in you. John says, And if I am, then the guardian angel replies, Then our search for you is over. What a surprise. You brought a new sinner for us as well. What manner of devil are you, harlot? I can feel the evil oozing off you too. Christine's going to say, The sort who doesn't care for murderers like you. The guardian angel says, I did not murder. I merely judge for the Lord. I am his sword, his warrior, his judge, and his hangman. John's going to say, You killed a good man. Strung him up like he was just meat. You're going to die for that. And the first guardian angel is going to say, All we are is meat. It's souls that carry weight and purpose. Your friend's soul was tainted black. He fraternized with the devil. John draws his pistol. The guardian angel touches his cross. We can see like a shard of wood is attached to the front of the cross, which he touches. When the light, we see the light shine forth, and John fires 3 shots. When the light fades, we see the bullets fall to the ground, as if they've hit an invisible shield. The guardian angel is gonna let his hands flow out like he's a cross and say, God gives me protection from devils like you. Prepare to face the judgment of God, sinner. John's going to say, Me and God aren't exactly on speaking terms. I'd rather he keeps his judgment to himself. We'll pan around and see that he's drawing a card behind his back. He pulls a 10 of spades. He smirks. He turns and tackles Christine. Before they hit the ground, they vanish. We cut to the inside of a train and see them appear and land on the floor. Christine kind of gets hit on the ground. She looks over at John and says, You ass. You didn't have to tackle me like that. John says, I know, but I think you deserved it. She rolls her eyes. Where are we? Can't you tell? We're on the train to Tombstone. John stands up, then gives Christine his hand. She stands up too. She's a bit shaky on her feet. The first jump is always hard. You'll be fine in a few minutes. Christine leans against him for support. You shouldn't have drawn like that. It was too risky. John says, Not much of a choice there, unless you had some miraculous thing up your sleeve. I don't think it's your night yet. She rolls her eyes. What matters is we made it to the train. There's no way that asshole's going to catch us now. We're going to cut back to the train station. We'll see the guardian angel snarl and kick at the ground as the other guardian angel walks up behind him. He was not at his apartment. I felt your call. They were here. It's 2 of them. They both reeked of evil. Well, where are they? The second guardian angel asks. He used the cards to escape. I have no idea where he went. Do you still have your bones? The first asks. I do. Are you sure that will be necessary? The second replies. And the first one says that the girl was with them. There's something dangerous about her. I think it's best we let the bloody ones handle this. The second angel is going to pull a femur bone from his robes. It's marked with mysterious runes. He carves the name John Weber into it with his knife and lets the bone fall to the ground. It turns to blood and is absorbed into the dirt. The second angel says, Let God have mercy on their souls, if they still have them. We're going to cut back to the train. We'll see John and Christine are sitting in a train car. We see the ticket master come by. Your tickets? Christine says, You know, I think I lost ours. Will this work? She hands him money. I'll say like a $5 bill. I think that was a lot of money back at that time. I'm not actually looking at the conversion rates right in front of me. The ticket master is going to look at the money and say, I suppose it will. And he's going to move on. They'll sit in silence for a moment before Christine sighs. I lied. I'm going to California, she says. John replies, I know. She says, Come with me. Keep me and mine alive, and I'll pay you. Anything you want. I'll make you rich, John. John's gonna say, it's not about the money. Then what? Christine asks. Tell me why you left. I'll go with you. Just tell me the truth, and tell it straight. I just want to know what I did. I think I've earned that much. Christine's gonna look a little sad, then say, You were great, John. I mean that. But when we were together, it started to occur to me how it was all going to end. I wasn't sure at first, but when you drew that joker, I knew I was right. You know what I am. One way or another, you were going to die, and it would have been my fault. John says, don't you think that's my choice? Shouldn't I get to choose when I die? Don't I get a say in that? Christine says, I wouldn't have survived you long, John. The guilt would have killed me. I wasn't going to stay with you just to mourn you. Honestly, I thought you'd be better off without me. John laughs. You guessed wrong. You could have at least told me you were leaving. You were everything to me, the only family I had left. When you left, it damn near broke me. Christine says, if I told you I was going to, I wouldn't have left. And John says, then maybe you shouldn't have. Christine's going to start to say something, but they can't think of anything. John's not going to give her the chance to think of anything. Here's the truth. I'm not here for you, Christine. You burned that bridge. Now I'm looking to burn some of my own. That grim bastard and his angels killed Nicholas. They're going to pay for that. I'll go with you, just to put a bullet in his head. Christine's going to nod and say, then I'll be glad to have you. We see the train come to a stop at a station. The conductor calls the station name. I don't know what it is. I'll put a city name on the screen. When I'm recording this, I haven't actually written down what city it was because I meant to do research. Bad writer moment right there. We see workers jumping off the train and a few guests leaving. We cut back to John and Christine in their cabin. Something's bothering me. That thing you did with the cross. I could do it with my cards. It was the same magic. Christine says, they said the devil was an angel once. I guess it's all the same. John says, if it is the same, then I know how to kill them. I suspect they don't have half the surprises I do. As he says it, the lights flicker in the train. We cut to the outside where we see workers working around. We see a bloody hand reach out of the ground. Soon 5 blood and gut-covered zombie-like creatures climb out from the dirt. One of the conductors spots them, but he's killed before he can say anything. They climb aboard the train, leaving behind bloody footprints everywhere they step. They release guttural moans, and through the moans we can hear the words, John Weber. All, spooky-like. They move into the car filled with people. The passengers scream and try to run. The bloody ones ignore them, or occasionally quickly kill one with their long claws. So, for those who don't know, bloody ones are a creature from Deadlands. They look like this. There it is. Very nice. And they are spooky supernatural monsters spawned by magic bones, just like I showed here. Spooky. John and Christine see all the people panicking and join them. As they join the crowd, the bloody ones see them and John pulls out his pistol. We see Christine bring her rifle from her bag. John says, what are the chances this has to do with us? Christine says, hi. John says, I agree. They move along with the crowd until they're able to leave the train. We see the train station lit by the sunset. It's an old wooden thing in the old town. We see one of the bloody ones make eye contact through a window of the train. It lets out a shriek and then runs towards the door. John and Christine try to run away, but the bloody ones start to catch up with them. They start yelling John Weber. Damn it all, I can't catch a break, John says. He turns and fires a shot at the monster. It blows right through the creature's body, but blood drips down and fills the hole. Oh, that's just not fair, John says. They keep running as the creatures grow closer. We see a sheriff and two deputies ride up on horses. They open fire on the bloody ones. John and Christine run past them. We see a bloody one attack and kill one of the deputies. I'll say it's pretty gruesome, blood and guts, the whole 9 yards. We'll go R-rated for this. The sheriff finishes one with a headshot and it dies. A second bloody one leaps off a wall, bounding forward and killing him by ripping out his neck. John says, you see that? It's the head. Christine fires her rifle and hits one of the bloody ones right in the head, killing it. John shoots at one as well, but it starts moving erratically and he misses twice before killing it. We see only 2 bloody ones remain. They both launch attacks on John. Christine shoots and kills one just before it snags John. The second one grows too close and she has to reload. He fires his pistol twice but misses once and hits the bloody one in the shoulder. He tries to fire again but realizes he's out of ammo. Christine is still reloading her rifle. It's too late. The bloody one slashes John across the shoulder. He winces, then rolls to avoid its next attack. In one fluid motion, he draws a card. We see it's the 5 of clubs. John throws it at the bloody one, and it explodes on contact with the monster. Blood and gore fly everywhere. We see the card flutter down and land in the center of the gore. John walks over and retrieves his card. He laughs, and Christine laughs with him. Just like old times, he says. Christine says, I don't remember fighting monsters in the old days. John says, I do. Christine cracks a smile. We see John study the pile of gore. He stands up holding the femur bone in his hand. All the runes have vanished, and all we can see is the name John Weber carved in the side. What is it? John says, my name is carved in the bone. These came from the angels. Are you sure about California? This is the kind of shit that's waiting for us. I'm sure. I must reclaim my family's legacy. It's everything to me, John. John nods his head, then looks down, realizing that he's completely covered in blood and gore. He says, I'm going to need a change of clothes. And that's where I'm ending episode 1.
Alright, well that was the first episode. I hope y'all enjoyed. I'm just going to be enjoying myself sunbathing here in the Wild West. I just want y'all to know when I record these videos, I don't actually wear boots. I am barefoot right now with the whole horrible outfit on. So here's what I'm going to say. If we can get to 100 subscribers by the time I finish this series, we're going to do a big old foot reveal. I might even get an only feet. So yeah, there's some motivation for y'all. I know how much you want to see my big ogre feet on YouTube. So there you go. 100 subscribers before I finish the Deadlands series, and you'll get to see my feet. That gives me motivation to finish this thing quickly as possible, and y'all motivation to get me subscribers. So honestly, it's a lose-lose for me. No matter how this pans out, I'm losing. But y'all win, so either via feet or via me putting out content quicker. So thanks for watching, y'all, and remember to subscribe to see my feet. I'm very serious. Hi, welcome back to Bjorn Does Movies. I am Bjorn and I do movies. This is episode 2 of the show and episode 3 of the series. That's confusing as hell, I know, and I should have probably just streamlined, but you know, we're going with it. Welcome back to Writing Deadlands. And I'm just going to jump right into it, no more preamble. The foot deal is still on, and those who watched the previous episode know what this is about, so start subscribing, guys.
Just a reminder, this is part 3. If you haven't seen part 2 at least, I do recommend going back and starting that. That covers the first episode, and you'll need it for the context of this episode. Alright, I'm calling episode 2 the Tombstone Epitaph. I still don't know if I'm saying that right, I don't really care. We are going to open on the interior of the Moon Estate in California. We see young Christine Moon sitting on a fancy couch with her mother. Her mother is quizzing her on the phases of the moon. We hear young Christine Moon say, full moon. And Elizabeth, her mother, says, that's right. And tonight? Christine says, waxing crescent. Elizabeth says, correct, which means? And young Christine replies, the stone's powers are low. Her mother says, right again. Christine's going to ask, Mother, what does the stone do? You've never said. A great many things. Once it fed our people and gave them protection. Now it keeps us safe. Without the heart of darkness, we and the people of this land would be cursed by evil. This stone is our legacy and our future. Someday it will be yours. She goes to the fireplace and picks up the gem, which is set on like a mantle, like a stand, I guess. It's a dark purple color, and it's covered in a metal apparatus that kind of turns. It's got runes on it. It glows when her mother touches it. Suddenly, the earth begins to shake. At first a tiny amount, then a lot. Christine, in a panicked voice, is going to go, is this the power of the stone? Her mother's going to say, no, sweetie, this is... She's cut off as a huge fissure opens up in the middle of the house. The earth keeps shaking and the house begins to rip itself apart. Christine Moon's mother falls into the pit with the stone in hand. The house shifts again and begins to slide. Christine falls and starts to slide towards the pit. She manages to grab the edge of the cliff and hold on. She looks down, and in the darkness, we see it sort of swirl, almost as if it's alive. And we see red eyes looking back at her from inside the pit. Just as Christine looks like she'll fall, we see a younger Hitoshi grab her arm and pull her to safety. They run through the house, dodging falling equipment and barely avoiding as the earth still shakes. What you're seeing, by the way, is the quake of '68. I think that should be pretty self-explanatory. As they leave the house, we zoom out to see giant fissures in the earth opening up as the maze begins to form. And then we're going to cut to the train. We see John asleep in his seat. Christine watches him intently. A slight smile lights her face and vanishes just as quickly. The train hits a bump and John wakes up. He looks out the window. Where are we? Christine's going to say, somewhere in Arizona. It won't be long now. John will say, it'll be good to get off this damn train. I've never liked these things. Christine says, oh, I remember. God, I thought you were going to shoot me back in Deadwood. I almost did. We hadn't been traveling together long, and you thought a train ride across the country was a grand idea. You had me at wit's end by the end of that week. Oh, like you were so innocent. What about that time in Comfort when you cheated in cards against the sheriff? You nearly earned us both a hanging. John's gonna say, I'll admit that wasn't my best showing. Honestly, I didn't even need the cheat. He was really bad at cards. Christine's gonna kind of smile and say, we were wild back then. John will say, we were. A silence is going to pass over them, and then John will ask, has anyone shot that bastard Hitoshi yet? Christine's going to say no. John's going to say, I may just have to solve that little problem. Christine will tell him not to joke about it, and John will say, don't tell me he's in Tombstone. Christine says she won't tell him. John gets pissed and says, oh hell, you had to bring him along? Christine's going to say he has many useful skills. John's going to laugh. He fights with the sword. He's a relic of a different time and place. Christine's going to just say, try to keep the peace. We need all the help we can get. John's going to groan and lean back in his seat. We're going to cut to the train station in Tombstone. We'll see the train pull in. As we follow it, the camera passes Hitoshi. We see the sword at his waist. Men and women begin to exit the train. We see John and Christine leave with them. Christine makes her way to Hitoshi when she spots him. She hugs him, and then he whispers in her ear, I told you he would come. They break the hug as John approaches. John looks Hitoshi up and down. I have to admit, even after meeting the guardian angels, you're still the last person on the planet I wanted to see. Hitoshi's gonna say, I see you're still an asshole. John will reply, I reckon I am. Judging by the company you keep, I also reckon you like assholes. Christine snorts and John walks past Hitoshi. Let's just get this done. Where's the epitaph? Hitoshi's gonna say, down the main street. Christine raises an eyebrow as John makes his way down the road. Christine and Hitoshi follow behind. Hitoshi's gonna say, I see he's still friendly. Christine's gonna say, give him a break. He's had a rough week. Hitoshi says, he mentioned guardian angels. They came for him in Kansas. Killed a friend of his. We got onto the train and escaped until they sent monsters after. Hitoshi's gonna say, I should have gone with you. Christine says, we're fine. It worked out. Hitoshi replies, these angels are dangerous. We're going into the lion's den. Christine will say, we've done it before. We see John stop and approach a 2-story wooden building. A wooden sign reading the Tombstone epitaph hangs on its front. John tries the door and finds it locked. He knocks. Hello? Anyone there? No one answers. John checks the windows and sees they've been boarded up from the inside. Christine says, I guess no one's here. John says, someone's in there. I saw the light go out under the door when I knocked. John knocks again. No answer. Well, I tried it. Nice. He kicks down the door. It smashes open. John enters the building and Christine and Hitoshi follow. We're going to cut to Albuquerque. We'll see the guardian angels exit a train. The first guardian angel says, are you sure it's here? And the second says, I feel its pull. It's here. They walk forward until they're near the center of the town. One of the angels bends over and picks up a bone from the floor. We see it's the same bone that came from the bloody ones in the last episode. Guardian Angel 1 says, the runes are gone. Guardian Angel 2 says, they killed it. These are no ordinary devils. Their first will say, to Tombstone then. The second will agree. To Tombstone. We're going to cut to the Tombstone epitaph. We'll see John and the others searching the building. They see all sorts of odd things. Strange creatures instead of glass jars. Weird stones with odd symbols carved on them. You know, just general weird stuff. Maybe some fun references to the game. I'm not really going to stop and think about everything they're going to see because it would just, take a lot of time that we don't really have. That would be a set designer's job. As they search, they find no one in the entire building. It's empty, eerily. John says, whoever is here, they're hiding. After a bit of searching, they find a shut closet door. John studies it and then kind of nods to himself. He gestures to Hitoshi, who also nods. He quietly opens the door and finds a gun pointed at his face. A small man with black hair and glasses holds a double-barrel shotgun right to his head. He doesn't fire. Instead, he looks past John, at Christine and Hitoshi. You folk don't look like angels. Who are you? Lacey says. This is none other than Lacey O'Malley, the head writer for the Tombstone Epitaph and a huge character in the Deadlands game. Basically everything you read in the manuals is from this guy's writing. Lacey's going to say, you folk don't look like angels. Who are you? Christine's going to say, because we're not. We're just curious readers of your paper. John will say, you are the writer of the Tombstone Epitaph, correct? Lacey says, if I am. John says, then we're friends who just want some information. Lacey slowly lowers the gun. What kind of information do you want? Christine says, you wrote about the Lost Angels, about a ritual involving a magic stone. So I did. We just want to know your source. We'd like to ask him about the stone. It's very important. Lacey puts the gun to his side. I'm afraid you're too late. She's dead. John's gonna say, oh hell. Christine will say, what happened? Lacey's gonna say, they found out she was talking to me and killed her dead. She was a good person and they murdered her. But what she knew, I know. Christine says, and what's that? And Lacey says, their dirty secret. I can tell you. I know it. John says, go on and say it. Lacey says, I need assurances first. There are men who are coming to kill me. Bad men, the dangerous sort. I'm not much of a fighter, but you folk have that look. Keep me alive through the night and get me out of Tombstone. I'll tell you everything I know. John says, done. Who are we dealing with? Lacey says, mercenaries, hired by the Angels, I think. They arrived a week ago. The sheriff kept them off me at first, but more kept coming. Yesterday they put lead in him. I'll be a dead man tonight, maybe even sooner. Hitoshi's gonna ask, how many of them are there? Lacey will say, I don't know. At least 12, probably more. Christine says, tell us what you know and we'll handle the mercenaries when they come. Lacey says, I can do that. The Angels, they're hiding something weird in their citadel. My source, Kasana, saw them. And before he can finish, a young boy bursts through the front door. He runs into the room. Mr. O'Malley, they're coming. Just rode into town, my pa saw. The boy stops and eyes John and Hitoshi nervously. Lacey says, how long ago? Lacey says, how long ago? The boy says, only a few minutes. I ran as fast as I could. Lacey's gonna say, thank you, Owen. Take the back door out. The little boy nods and runs straight for the back. John makes straight for the front door. He walks outside just as 6 men on horseback ride up. 2 are holding rifles. The rest clearly have revolvers at their waist. Their leader rears his horse and then stares John down. He says, who are you, the new sheriff? I don't see a badge. John says, no, I ain't the law-abiding type. Mercenary leader says, then leave. You got no business here. John says, I'm an active reader of the paper. I don't want to see it shut down. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The mercenary leader laughs. A reader, huh? I don't believe that. John says, believe what you will. I'm going to stay right here. Mercenary leader says, we just want the newsman. Leave, and the rest of you can have your lives. John stares him down. I already told you, I'm not moving. You don't frighten me, boy. He lets one of his hands slide down to his gun. He slides the other to his cards. Other men begin to exit from houses around the epitaph. Many are holding rifles or handguns. They don't look too pleased with the mercenaries who have just killed their sheriff. The mercenary leader smiles and moves his own hand away from his gun. Think on it. We'll be back tonight. If you ain't here and that newsman is, we won't have a problem. But stay and know you'll die. John laughs. I'll extend the same offer. Come tonight and know you'll die, friend. The mercenary smiles. Where did that newsman find somebody like you? You seem like one tough bastard. I'll double whatever he's paying. John says he's not interested. The mercenary shrugs, then turns around. He whistles his men to leave. They all saunter off as John watches. The armed men in the doorway go back to their houses. John goes back inside the epitaph. Lacey says, You made them leave. John says, so I did, but they'll return. You better hope we're still here when they do. Christine says, I think you have a promise to fulfill, Mr. O'Malley. He says, please call me Lacey, and I'll tell you what you want to know. Christine says, the Lost Angels. Tell me everything you know. And Lacey's going to do just that. He says, I've always wrote about the weird. I've been out in these Deadlands more than most, and I've seen things that ain't right. Lost Angels have been on my mind for a while. I'd heard stories of miracles like I imagine y'all have. I'd also heard of their leader fighting off devils and demons. In all my years, I've never seen a demon. So I went to the maze and made it to the city of the Lost Angels. You've been before? Christine asks. Twice now, Lacey says. It was the first time that I met my contract. A woman by the name of Cassandra Leary. She worked as a cook for the Guardian Angels and Ezekiel Grimm himself. After I got to know her, she started telling me things. The more she spoke, the more I realized the angels were hiding something. She told me of a room the workers weren't allowed to enter, with doors made of steel. She said it was powered by a ghost rock machine unlike anything she'd ever seen. What's stranger, she swore she'd see men go in and not return for days. They always came back with something, often large amounts of food, sometimes mysterious gold and jewels. Who'd go in, Christine asks. She said it was only Grimm and some of his closest angels. She was sure they were hiding something dark. It was her thinking that they were forging some kind of deal with the devil, or some other such evil. I'm not so sure. I've seen the angels perform miracles from God. Hell, I interviewed damn near 200 people who swore up and down that Grimm banished demons before their eyes. I think he's hiding something, but I don't think it's the devil. I heard some stories myself. rumbles of a magic stone that could grant powerful miracles from God. Hitoshi lets out a laugh. It's not from God. It's from France. Christine says, it has to be the Heart of Darkness. Grimm has locked it away in that safe. Lacey says, the Heart of Darkness? And Christine replies, it was an heirloom in my family. It was a gem my parents always said was magic. I lost it in the maze years ago. Grimm must have found it. And now I know where I can find it. Lacey says, you're thinking of stealing it. Christine says, it wouldn't be stealing. It belongs to me. It's my birthright. Lacey says, it's suicide. At least 20 angels are in the Citadel at all times. The city is even more dangerous than that these days. John asks, dangerous how? Macy says, they don't advertise it, but when Grimm banished those demons, he missed a few. Folk go missing or turn up as mangled corpses. People see them too. Dark shadows with monstrous shapes patrolling the streets at night. If you ain't careful in that city, you're liable to end up dead. You said your source was killed. How'd it happen? Macy says, I don't know. I've been exchanging letters with her. We plan to meet on my next visit, but in the week leading up to my travels, I stopped hearing from her. I found out why when I arrived. They hung her up in the square as a devil worshipper. I didn't even stay the night. And it was a good thing too. The angels had seen my article, and they weren't fond of it. They would have killed me had I stayed. And that's how I knew I was onto something. Cassandra was a good person. I know she wasn't a devil worshipper. John says, I have similar grievances with the angels. Christine says, Lacey, you hate them. Come with us. You know your way through the city. You have contacts there. You can help us get in and help us steal the stone. Don't you want to hit them where it hurts? Lacey says, I've seen some evil in my day. Been to a lot of bad places in the West. But these angels, they're something different. I shouldn't have messed with them. I won't go back to that city. I know more about the angels. Get me the hell out of Tombstone and I'll tell you everything. Christine lets out an exasperated sigh. She gets up and walks away to the other room. John says, don't take it personally. She acts that way with everyone. He gets up and follows Christine. Only Hitoshi and Lacey are left in the room. Hitoshi kind of looks around awkwardly, then says, that thing you wrote about the killer tumbleweeds. That's not true, is it? Lacey says, I've seen them in the Deadlands. Some type of spider or other such insect. I don't like spiders. They hunt the cowards away, with such refuge and traps. Lacey kind of looks at him confused and says, I see. We're going to cut to John and Christine in the other room. John enters the room, flipping a coin up into the air and catching it. Christine says, can you deny it now, John? I'll admit it's compelling, but I don't like it. I feel like we're missing something here. Christine nods. I agree. I especially don't like that business with the demons. You know a thing or two about them. John nods. Mostly how to gamble with them. I can tell you how they make me feel. Whenever I play a game against them, a sense of evil washes over me. Like my opponent is just waiting to get at my soul. A demon manifested in our world would be like a living nightmare. Christine says, a living nightmare can be killed, else it wouldn't be living. John shakes his head. I'm not so sure. You don't have to do this, you know. You can just let this be. Christine says, you're wrong. I have to do it. I owe it to my mother to restore our family purpose. I know I say it a lot, but it's everything to me. If I don't do this, I'll never live a normal life, John. You know my curse. That stone could fix me. John looks at her. And what does a normal life look like for you? Christine doesn't answer. John sighs with frustration, then flips the coin once more. Christine catches it before it can land. She studies it. A union coin. Are these worth much down here? John says, they can be, to the right seller. Christine says, sounds to me like you chose the wrong side. They say the union is losing. John says, I always choose the underdog. People never see someone they think is beneath them coming until it's too late. In my experience, the little guy gets crushed underfoot. John says, I know you well enough to know you don't mean that. Christine says, I guess you do. I should warn you, it's my night. John asks her, you want me to take care of it? No, Christine says. I'll just keep to myself tonight. John asks, are you sure that's wise? Christine says, you will not draw a card. You've drawn too damn many. John says, all right, I won't draw. Christine says, that thing I gave you on our first date, do you still have it? John clutches at his necklace. I do, but I won't use it. You shouldn't have to. I'm going to get away from the town. If it's all the same, stay inside if you can. John says, I will. Christine nods and moves for the door. She walks past Hitoshi and Lacey, who are now studying the dead body of a tumblebleed. This is my way of slipping a tumblebleed in. These are one of my favorite monsters from the game. We're going to get to see another one of my all-time favorites in this later. I just think these things are really silly and fun. So I really wanted to put one in, and I couldn't figure out a way to make one not goofy in like an actual combat setting. So this is how I came up with doing it without wrecking the tone. Lacey's gonna ask, where's she going? John's gonna say, out for a few things. She'll be back soon. John settles next to where Hitoshi is. Lacey gets up to go watch Christine leave from the window. Hitoshi turns to John after he's gone. He says, I'm gonna be honest with you, John. I don't like you. John's gonna smile and say, I assure you the feeling is mutual. Hitoshi will say, that being said, Christine cares for you, more than even you know. She is still in love with you. John's gonna say, I think you're wrong about that. And Hitoshi will say, I'm not. I see it in her eyes when she looks at you. I see it in yours too. You can lie and try to hide it, but you're in love with her. Why else would you come all the way to Tombstone? John's gonna ask, what are you getting at? He'll say, don't die, John. I might not like you, but she does. If something were to happen to you on this trip, she'd blame herself. The one thing we have in common is that we both care for her. I don't want to see her hurt, and I know you feel the same. John says, well, you're in luck. I don't plan on dying. Hitoshi says, good, because if you do, I'll kick your ass in hell. John smiles and actually laughs a little. Hitoshi, if I didn't know you better, I'd swear that was a joke. Lacey returns, and we see a time lapse of the three of them in the room. It stops when we see Lacey showing them a blood wire inside of another one of its glass tubes. Lacey says, nasty thing. Looks like barbed wire to hide along fences. These critters were causing all sorts of violence amongst the cowboys. The wounds they inflicted look like bullet holes. It took my article to soothe some tension. Hell, these things must have started at least 10 range wars. John asks, what is it really? Lacey says, that's the mystery. A creature that looks like a human fence shouldn't exist at all. We haven't been around long enough to change a creature like that. Yet it's here, a mystery indeed. Suddenly the sound of hooves fill the room. We hear shouts and whoops from outside. We hear the mercenary leader yell, newsman, come on out. If you don't, we'll burn the place down with you in it. John says, looks like our friends have come back. He pulls the pistol from his holster. I'm gonna go say hello. He heads upstairs and cracks one of the windows. He sticks his gun out and fires, killing one of the mercenaries. He ducks back around the corner just as a hail of gunfire fills the room. Mercenary yells, hold your fire. You're just wasting bullets on wood. I tried to play nice, newsman. He pulls out a Molotov cocktail and lights it with a match. He says, surround the building. Shoot anyone who comes out. His men start to move around back. The mercenary throws the Molotov and ignites the building in flames. John says, oh hell. He starts to run downstairs as smoke fills the house. He finds Hitoshi and Lacey downstairs. John says, we're in trouble. Hitoshi says, I know. They've already surrounded us. John says, we don't have a choice. We'll have to fight our way out. Hitoshi nods. We don't have time to waste. They approach the back door as the fire spreads in the house behind them. We can hear Lacey muttering nervously to himself. Hitoshi puts an ear against the wall and smiles. He pulls his sword from his sheath and then carefully sticks it straight through the wall. We hear a gurgling scream. When Hitoshi pulls his blade free, it's coated in blood. John quickly peeks out the black window. He sees two more men. He fires a shot, killing one. Bullets begin to rip through the side of the building again. John says, this was much easier when I could just draw a card. Hitoshi says, you still could. I don't need the cards for these sorts. I just need to kill time and keep them shooting. John peeks around the doorway and fires at another approaching mercenary. For what? With that racket they're making, it won't be long till she hears. Hitoshi laughs with sudden understanding. You're an evil bastard, John. Lacey says, not to tell you your craft, this building is on fire and this wall won't be covered for long. I don't think we have time to wait for whatever's coming. John says, you're right about that, Lacey. That's why I got a special surprise for him. When I say so, you both run for them rocks over there. He gestures with his gun, then pulls dynamite from his bag. We see a mist of his smile creep across his face. He says, I've always wanted to try this. He lights the dynamite's fuse on the flaming house, throws it out the door towards the bad guys. Run, now, to the rock! All three men run. We see several of the mercenaries trying to escape the dynamite, but it's too late. A huge explosion rips across them. We see like limbs blowing off. We'll get really graphic here. We hear the screams of men. Bullets fly across the dirt as John and the others try to make it to the rocks. Just as they slide behind the rock pillar, we hear the distant howling of a wolf. Lacey turns to see his house burning in flames against the full moon. He looks sad and says, this place was my legacy. He doesn't have time to be sad, though. The mercenary leader strolls into sight with more of his men. He says, enough of this farce. You've lost, gunslinger. Come out and give us the newsman. and we'll spare you. Hell, I'll hire you. I'll need more men after this. John says, I haven't lost. You just haven't realized it yet. A silence falls over the men and we hear the wolf howl again. The mercenary leader asks, do you really want to die that badly? Fine, I'll put you in the dirt myself. Suddenly, one of the mercenaries screams and vanishes. The leader turns back in time just to see one of his men jerked into the darkness. A dark creature slowly lumbers into the moonlight. It's shot in shadow, so you can't really see what it is. It leaps forward and grabs another man, ripping him in two. The mercenaries begin to fire on it, but whatever it is, it keeps moving towards man after man, ripping them apart in really gory, fun, spectacular fashion. Soon, half the mercenaries are killed. We see John rip the glass vial off his necklace. He lets a silver bullet fall into his hand. He carefully loads it into his gun. What is that thing? Macy says, watching the creature. Salvation, friend, John says. These bastards chose the wrong night for a fight, and now they're fucked. We see the last of the mercenaries firing at the monster. It's no use. It keeps ripping through them, spilling blood and guts everywhere. At last, only the leader is left. He puts 3 pistol rounds into the beast. It lopes up to him and takes his head off with one swipe of its claws. The creature howls in victory, and for the first time we see it silhouetted against the full moon. It's a werewolf. Blood drips from its claws and its fur is soaked red. It starts to eat one of the bodies, then stops and smells the air. It looks towards the rocks and lets out a howl. John steps out from behind the rocks. He tosses his gun to Lacey. If I die, shoot it with that and don't miss. The werewolf begins to run towards John. He stops and waits to greet it as he pulls a card from his deck. We see it's a Queen of Hearts. Green light surrounds John. The werewolf almost reaches him, then finds itself surrounded in the light as well. It lets out a howl-like shriek and begins to cower back. The werewolf slowly turns back into a human under the green light of the Queen of Hearts. Christine looks up at John. She's naked. John pulls off his duster and wraps it around her. He smiles and says, "You've got to stop meeting like this." Christine laughs and hugs him. She whispers in his ear, "I told you not to draw." And John says, "I didn't listen." Christine says, "I can see that. Thank you, John." He says, "I should be thanking you." Christine asks why. He says, "Because you took care of our new friends back there." He gestures towards the dead mercenaries. Christine says, "I did that?" John says, "Yeah, and it's a good thing too. They about had us." Lacey steps out from behind the rocks. "You're a werewolf," he says. John says, "Nothing slips by you, huh?" Christine says, "It's my family's curse. We've had it for generations. When the moon is full, I transform. Only John here can stop me." Lacey says, "I didn't think werewolves were real. I need to write an article." Hitoshi laughs and says, "You have funny priorities, Lacey." Lacey says, "I'm not the one who wants to go to the maze." John smiles and says, "Actually, I think you are. You asked us to get you out of Tombstone. That's exactly what I'm going to do. You get to go with us to the city of the Lost Angels, unless you want to stay here." Lacey goes still. "With the werewolf?" Christine says, "The werewolf has a name." John says, "It'll be fine. We got a while till there's another full moon. Plenty of time." Christine says, 27 days. John says, "See, Lacey? 27 days of safety." We see Lacey weighing his options in his head. He has no choice. He has to go with them or face death. His face kind of turns pale and he says, "Oh, hell." The camera pulls out from them until we see a man in an eye patch and a duster watching them. As the camera passes, he turns to leave. Cut the credits as we hear the song "Howling for You" by the Black Keys play. So a lot happened in this episode, but also, not a lot happened. Like, it was mostly an action-oriented episode. Our next one is going to be the longest episode. I think it's going to clock in around an hour when I record the whole thing. I haven't actually written most of it yet, so we'll have to wait and see. A couple big reveals in this episode. Of course, Christine Moon is a werewolf. I'm sure a lot of you picked up on this. I've been dropping hints about it pretty unsubtly throughout the whole first 2 episodes. Her name is literally Christine Moon, so you get what you pay for in the tin. John gets some fun moments to shine here. We get a lot of great action. We get more of Hitoshi, who didn't really get much to do in the first episode. He's going to get a lot more to do going forward, as we get a lot of character development. And of course, we get introduced to Lacey O'Malley, who's a classic Deadlands character. He's been in the game for as long as it's existed. So I was like, it was a no-brainer for me putting him in this series. And he'll get some more moments to shine as well. And we get introduced to a mysterious new character who watches them at the end. I don't know where that's going, so y'all are going to have to tune into the next episode to find out. Hey, thanks for watching, folks. I'm very serious about the foot thing. That is still on the table, so
subscribe, I guess. I just want to thank everyone again for all the love I'm getting on this channel. It means a lot to me, and so yeah, hope to see y'all in the next one. Hi, welcome back to Writing a Deadlands TV show. This is episode 3 of the show, episode 4 of the actual series. And so if you haven't seen the previous episodes, you might want to go ahead and stop and go mosey on over there and take a little bit of a gander over there. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Just another friendly reminder that this is part 3 of a series. If you've not seen part 1 or part 2, I do highly recommend going back and watching those. Alright, with that out of the way, I'm going to call this episode The Deadlands. We are going to open on a flickering fire alone in the middle of the open wilderness. A man sits there, warming his hands against the fire. We see his breath in the cold. In the distance, we hear the howl of a wolf. The man draws 3 cards from a deck and lays them in front of him. He starts to play a card game with himself. We hear the howling of a wolf, louder this time. He looks up and turns to face the sound. For the first time, we can see that it's a younger John Weber. Text appears on the screen that says 11 years ago. John hears footsteps around his camp. He carefully picks his cards up and shuffles them. He stands up just as a werewolf lumbers into the firelight. Its fur is black as night, and it snarls as he stalks John. Blood drips from an open wound on the beast's stomach. We can see the creature's red eyes reflecting the firelight. John says, "There's an odd sight. Are you in control of yourself?" The beast snarls and charges at John. He pulls out a card and bathes the creature in green light. We see it transform into Christine. She's naked, and the wound on her stomach is still there. John stands, and Christine backs away warily, clutching the wound. John holds out a calming hand and gives her his duster. He says, "I'm the friendly sort. You can relax." Christine says, "I was going to kill you. You saved me from that. Thank you." John says, "I did it for entirely selfish reasons, so don't thank me. I'm John Weber." And she says, "Christine Moon." John says, "Moon. A bit on the nose." And she says, "It's a family name." He asks her if he's got that family looking for her, and she says no. John says, "Well, I got an extra set of clothes, not exactly your size, but it'll do, and you're welcome to them and the fire. I know what it's like to be alone out here. You can travel with me, at least for a while." Christine says, "Why are you helping me?" And John says, "Because I know what it's like to hide yourself. You're the first I've met in a long time who's like me. I reckon you'll make for good company." He tells her that he's got some bandages that he can use to bandage up her wound. She tells him that she won't need it because she heals quickly under the moon. John then asks her what could do something like that to her. And she says, "I don't remember. I never do. Just the vague outlines of emotions. I only remember fear." We're going to cut to 11 years later. We're going to see John and Christine sitting in a saloon. John says, "That was close last night. Too close. The wolf is getting stronger. I almost couldn't force it away last night." Christine says, "We've known that was coming for a while now. My curse only gets stronger with age. We're running out of time. I need the Heart of Darkness, or next time, I don't think I'll be able to stop." John sighs. "Well, with some luck, Hitoshi managed to find us a guide." He gestures to Hitoshi and Lacey O'Malley, who are walking in. The two of them join them at the table. Hitoshi says, "We found someone willing to take us tomorrow. He says he's a guide." Christine says that that's good. And Hitoshi says, "I suppose. I don't know that I trust him. He seems like the desperate sort." And John remarks that they all are. Suddenly, another man takes a seat at their table. He's got a black duster and a matching black hat. An eye patch covers his right eye. He's an older man with sun-dried skin. We can see a pistol hangs at his hip. John says, "Who are you supposed to be?" And the man replies, "I'm William Morrison, but the people around here call me Ghost Eye. You bunch made quite the racket last night. Had me about howling at the moon." Christine goes pale, and John pulls his gun from its holster and levels it at William. He says, "Relax, friend. You'll find no trouble from me." John lowers the gun slightly. Christine asks what he wants, and Ghost Eye says, "Just to warn you, your guide is going to kill you tomorrow. He always does it, buries the bodies 10 miles outside town and takes any valuables. I could take you to see it if you want." Hitoshi says, "No, I believe it of him. I don't trust anyone of his sort." Ghost Eye says, "Then you're wise. I'm taking a group out tomorrow. Give me $20 apiece and you can join me in mine." John says, "How do we know we can trust you?" And Ghost Eye says, "Ask your friend there. I've taken him twice." Lacey replies, 3 times actually." Ghost Eye says, 3 times? Really? I'm losing my touch." Hitoshi says, $20 seems fair. I will agree to that. And Ghost Eye says, I'm glad. I hate seeing interesting men die pointless deaths. He stands and tips his hat before leaving. Christine quickly turns to John. He knew. That bit about howling at the moon, he must have seen me. John says, well, maybe he's just using a saying. No way to know for sure. Lacey, what's this guy like? Lacey says, stoic, but not a soul can deny his skill. He's the only reason I'm still breathing. He's nice enough and never really digs into business that isn't his. John says, see Christine? He's a dependable sort. Christine says, fine, we'll use him, but I don't trust him a bit. The next morning, we're going to see the group arrive at the edge of Tombstone. There they find Ghost Eye waiting with another man. Ghost Eye's going to say, now that everyone's here, I'm going to tell you how this works. You've hired me as your guide. I'm supposed to get you to the maze alive. I could very well do that, but I could just as easily fail. Half that's up to you. If you fail to listen to me, I will leave you. If you wander off, I will leave you. If I have to choose between one of you and all of you, I'll pick everyone. If you don't like the way that sounds, I invite you to take your money and leave. About everything we're going to find out in these Deadlands wants to kill you. If you see anyone who is not a member of the group, do not interact with them unless I say so. Are you all clear on how this works? They nod. He says, good. Is there anyone who would like their money back? None of them say anything. He says, then let's begin. He walks towards a wagon being pulled by 2 horses. It's got boxes and crates and some seats for people to sit on. John leans over to Christine and says, God above and the devil below, he takes this seriously. Christine says, he's not wrong about the West. And John says, no, he's not. I've heard it's worse out West way, since the quake. Christine says, don't know. I've avoided it. We watch the caravan start down a rough road. We see the sun rise until it's afternoon. We follow John and Christine walking together as a man from earlier approaches them. I don't think we've met. The name is David McCarran. What's brought you folks out west? John says, Ghost Rock. And David says, I suppose that's what's brought us all. John asks him if he's been to the maze before. And David says, no. I did my Ghost Rock mining up north till the mines ran dry. Now I'm down here. Christine says, the northern mines are dry? David says, more or less. If you don't mind me asking, what brings a woman to the west? It's a dangerous part of the world. John says, she's my wife. We're hoping to start a new life. David says, well, I hope you find luck with that. You could have picked a more orthodox place. Christine says, we're the adventurous sort. And David says, well, I wish you luck. He wanders up towards Ghost Eye and starts to talk to him. Christine leans over to John and says, when did we get married? John says, hey, I saved you. I know his sort. If you weren't taken, he'd stop at nothing to get at you. Christine says, well, maybe we should get married after all this. John says, I don't believe you mean that. Teasing me is cruel, you know. And she says, I'm not teasing you. With the heart of darkness, I could control my transformations. I could be a normal person with a family, John. And he says, let's get the stone first. You can propose to me after. How do you plan on taking it anyway? Christine says, haven't exactly figured that out yet. I figure some combinations of our skills should be enough. We've got Lacey to show us to the vault. She smiles. I should check on Hitoshi. He was never one for traveling. John says, if we're lucky, maybe he'll wander off. Christine says, and I was starting to worry about you getting along with him. I was afraid you weren't really John at all. We're going to cut to Tombstone. We're going to see one of the guardian angels arrive in Tombstone. He finds the epitaph burned, and we see him pick through the ruins for a while until another angel finds him. I finally named these angels. These are the same 2 that have been chasing our heroes since the beginning of the story. The first one, who was Guardian Angel 1, is now Guardian Angel Grant, and the one who was Guardian Angel 2 is now Guardian Angel Rinley. So those are their names. I'll be referring to them as that from now on. I figured that'll make it easier to tell them apart. The first one says, Rinley. They've already left. Rinley asks which way, and Grant replies, to the maze. Rinley says, they're coming to our territory. Why? They shouldn't be running from us. I don't like it. There's something we're missing. Grant replies, we'll catch them. We have to. We must kill any who bears ill will to the shepherd. Rinley replies, we will buy horses. They won't outpace us then. We can't let them reach the city with their lives. We see Ghost Eye lighting a fire. Hitoshi eyes him carefully. You said there are things out here that eat men. Won't a fire just bring them to us? Ghost Eye says, fire keeps off the beasts with no brains. The sort that would be willing to attack us with full force. The fire attracts the smart ones, though. Don't trust anything at night in the Deadlands. Hitoshi says, I don't care for tricks. They're the weapons of cowards. Ghost Eye says, more like the weapons of the clever. We see them cook beans and pork over the fire. John tells a funny story and laughter fills the air. You know, it's all hunky-dory, but it's cut short when a cry rings out from the darkness. A voice of a woman says, "Help me please." An odd silence falls over the camp. David looks out towards the sound. "I'm hurt. I've been shot. I need help. Please, I can see your fire." David stands up from his spot. "We have to help her." Gusta says, "There's no one out there to help." David says, "I heard her. What's that supposed to mean?" And Gusta says, "It's no woman. Sit down, fool." Suddenly the voice in the dark changes. No longer is it the crying of a woman. It's the wailing of a baby. The camp goes quiet. "What is it?" David asks. Gusta says, "Couldn't say for sure. There are a great many things out here that sound like men. They all want one thing, for you to come and see. As I said, the fire keeps away the dumb ones, but it brings in the smart ones. The woman didn't work, so now it's trying the child." David asks if it'll come into camp, and Ghostai says it could, but it won't. Too much risk for it. Critters with brains don't like risk. Get some sleep. We'll make it to the sands tomorrow. We won't have the luxury of sleep till we reach the stone. We watch John and Christine climb into bedrolls as we hear the baby crying again. We're going to cut to the caravan the next day. We see the land they're traveling on is turned into a sandy desert. The cart moves over the sand very slowly until a wheel pops off the wagon and it crashes to the ground. Gustav begins to panic. "Oh hell, I need help. We have to fix this fast. We shouldn't be out here after sundown." John, Hitoshi, and David lift the cart up and Ghostai slowly fixes the wheel. We'll do like a small time lapse, see the sun is getting heavier as it gets closer to the night. Once it's repaired, they're going to immediately start traveling again. We'll see Ghostai check his pocket watch. "We're not going to make it. Lost too much time. It's going to be dark before we make it to the rock." David asks, "What happens then?" And Ghostai replies, "With luck, nothing." We follow them for a while until the sun starts to set. We see their wagon is lit by lanterns. We watch Ghostai as he eyes nervously from side to side. His hand clings to his holstered gun. John asks Lacey what has him so jumpy, and Lacey replies, "This is the dangerous part. He can't afford to stop or let his guard down." Hitoshi asks why it's so dangerous, and Lacey says, "Rattlers. Most don't take this path for that very reason, even though it's the fastest way. There is a risk you won't make it by sundown." Which we didn't. "What's a rattler?" Christine asks. Lacey says, "In truth, I don't know. I've never seen one, and I'm the better for it. I know they live in the ground and hunt men who walk upon its surface." As they travel through the dark, the earth begins to shake. Ghostai looks startled before he calls the horses to a stop. The ground starts to shake even harder. We can see it's causing their teeth to chatter due to the intensity, and that's why they call them rattlers, because it makes your bones rattle. John says, "What is this, an earthquake?" Lacey says, "It's a rattler." Ghostai yells, "Off the wagon!" Then, "Nobody move. Stand perfectly still." We see them jump off the wagon and stand still. The shaking grows worse. We're going to focus in on Christine. She's breathing heavily, and we see flashes of her mother being killed in the quake of '68. She's about to run out of panic when Hitoshi takes her hand. He says, "You're okay, Christine. I'm here." She catches her breath and breathes deeply, just as the horses bolt. They drag the wagon out towards the desert. The shaking stops for a few moments. Suddenly, sand explodes around the wagons, and the horses vanish. We hear pained whines and screams of the horses. When the sand settles, only a single lantern is left, lighting the sand. Everything else is gone, but we can see that there's blood. The earth starts shaking again. David panics. "It's coming to us." Ghostai says, "Calm down. Don't run." David says, "To hell with that." David makes a run for it. The rumbling of the earth intensifies as the rattler starts to chase him, then stops. The ground explodes around David as tentacles emerge from the earth. We can say he's got a lantern on his belt so we can see him lit, see this lit by the lantern in the moonlight. The tentacles hoist him off the ground and ensnare all around him, grabbing up his arms and his legs. He starts to fight and struggle with them, so they begin to break his bones one by one, twisting his legs off until it completely twists him around, snaps him in two, and pulls him into the earth. It's pretty graphic, and blood sprays everywhere. Christine's going to go, "Oh hell," and try to fight from vomiting. John's going to say, "What the fuck is that?" And Ghostai's going to say, "That's a rattler. Nasty beast. We won't be able to kill it. We have to wait till sunrise." We see them standing in the sand, and we're going to do a time lapse of them trying to stand still. As the sun starts to rise, we can see that they have bags under their eyes and they're barely holding on. Ghostai says, "They won't chase us in the morning." John says, "Are you sure about that?" And Lacey says, "He's right. They don't like the daylight." And says, "Well, that's great, because I don't know how much longer I can stand here without moving." Suddenly, the rumbling starts again, then slowly fades away. After a moment, Ghostai takes a step,
then another step. The rattlers don't kill him. He says, "It's safe. We can go." The rattler is gone, and Christine says, "Along with our supplies." There's a town not too far from here, Hope Falls. We should make it to the Rocky Mesa before dark. After that, we can travel safely to it and get more supplies. We see them walking through the desert in a montage until they reach the rocky earth. They move through a canyon. Suddenly, Ghost Eye throws up a hand. They all stop. "What is it?" John asks. He reaches his hand towards his deck of cards. Hitoshi says, "We're being watched. They're along the cliffs." John says, "Can't catch a break." Christine asks who it is. As soon as she asks, Native Americans start to appear from along the stones and cliffs. They all carry rifles or pistols. Real fast, I'm going to do a history with Bjorn section real fast, because oftentimes in pop culture you see Native Americans presented as having like bows and arrows and stuff, but around the setting of the Wild West and specifically Deadlands, most of them had firearms already. So of course they did use bows and arrows and tomahawks still, but many, especially the more warlike tribes, would have rifles and pistols either from trading or from dead enemies. And they already knew how to use them too around this time. So that's why my Native Americans have firearms. It was a stereotype that they didn't have guns. A single Native American appears from the canyon in front of them. Ghost Eye says, "Nobody draws a weapon. Let me handle this." Lacey says, "They must be Navajo. It's their land we travel. They're gonna kill us." Ghost Eye says, "They won't. I know of them." He puts his hands up in like a gesture of peace and approaches the natives. He starts to speak their language. I'll say this dialogue is in Navajo. I'm not going to translate it, and I'm certainly not going to try to pronounce any of that. But you guys can use your imaginations. He says, "We mean you no harm. We did not mean to cross into your territory. A rattler destroyed our wagon." The native is going to say, "We saw. We know what you are, Ghost Eye. Men of your ilk are not welcome here. You have been warned before." Ghost Eye says, "I know. If you know what I am, then you know not to bother me. I meant no ill will by my actions. Let us pass in peace, and you will not see me again." The native says, "We do not seek war with you, but we know you can die like any man. You may pass for a toll." Ghost Eye slowly reaches into his pocket carefully and removes a small stone pendant. He carefully hands it over to the native. "You know that work?" he asks. The native says, "I do. This will suffice. You may pass in peace, Ghost Eye. Do not tread on these lands again, or we will not be so forgiving." Ghost Eye says, "I will not." The group begins to move through the canyon again. We can see the natives following them along the cliff tops. John asks Ghost Eye, "What did you say to him?" And Ghost Eye says, "I offered him a trade for our passage." John asks what he traded, and Ghost Eye says, "Just an old trinket. Something of value only to men like me and them." They leave the canyon. We see the natives standing atop the cliffs watching them as they go. We see them walk through some plains for a while until we cut to Hope Falls. We see a waterfall flowing down to a river. A small town is built around it, sort of appearing out of the desert. Green and an oasis. You know, it's like an oasis caused by a spring, hence the name. Electricity wires run through its streets. We pan from the city to see our weary group arriving just as the sun starts to set. Their faces are sunburned and they look haggard. A man steps out of the sheriff's office, and he rides out to meet them. Ghost Eye says, "Stay here. I'll be right back." He walks up and meets the man. This guy's named Leonard Cave. He's tall and handsome in a sort of rugged way. He wears a sheriff badge on his shirt and a pair of pistols at his waist. He sort of looks like your stereotype lawman in these movies. The good guy, you know? Leonard says, "Ghost Eye, it's good to see you." And Ghost Eye replies, "How have you been, Leonard?" Leonard Cave says, "Oh, you know, hanging on." He looks past Ghost Eye to his caravan. "More sorry saps headed for the maze?" Ghost Eye says, "Something like that." Leonard nods his head. He says, "You look like hell." Ghost Eye says, "Lost a wheel in the sand. Rattler almost killed us all." Leonard says, "You're lucky to be alive, old friend." Ghost Eye says, "Oh, I know. Lost one to the beast." Leonard says, "Sorry to hear it." Ghost Eye says, "He knew the danger." Leonard says, "How long are you going to be in town?" Ghost Eye says, "Just a night or two. Time enough to recover and buy supplies. You got hotel rooms for us?" Leonard says, "The old cracked mesa should have rooms. All the miners have gone Sheltonville way since the railroad came. We'd be a ghost town if it weren't for that mad doctor and his electricity." Ghost Eye says, "Well, I'll bring some business your way." And Leonard says, "I appreciate it." Ghost Eye signals the caravan into town. We follow John as he studies the town. We see a toy shop with animatronic toys in the window and a big power plant being powered by a wheel in the river. John says, "This is something else." Christine says, "Sure is. I wouldn't have thought to see electricity this far out. Ghost Eye says, a man named Aldo Deringer builds it all himself. He's trying to make a name for himself as an engineer. John says, well, he picked the ass end of nowhere to do it. Ghost Eye says, this used to be the ghost rock capital of Arizona. All the ghost rock from the maze came through here. Christine asks what happened. Ghost Eye says, railroads chose another town, and it became the trade center instead. A man in front of a saloon gets up and approaches them as soon as he sees them. His name is Carlos Alonso. He's a character from one of the modules. Carlos says, have you come down Texas way? John says, no, friend. Tombstone, and before that, Kansas. Do you have any word of Santa Ana? Carlos asks. Has he taken back San Antonio from the Texans? John says, not that I've heard. Christine says, he hasn't. He's still down in Mexico, or so the papers say. Carlos says, he's biding time and building his strength. Santa Ana is a hero. He's going to bring peace to these lawless lands. John says, I doubt it. There's no law to be had out here. The man makes a stink face at him, not very happy about that, and stops and lets the party move on. John spares a look back for him. The man just stares and studies John right back. The sun sets and the electric lights of the city flicker to life. They arrive at the inn. An old woman sits on the porch lit by a light. She says, come in before the electric man gets you. She laughs to herself as though she said something really funny. She notices Ghost Eye and says, Ghost Eye, it's good to see you. I thought you were dead. Ghost Eye says, not yet, I'm afraid. I need a couple of rooms, whatever's cheapest. The woman says, that's all the rooms these days. Come on in, I'll get you folks situated. They follow her into the old building, and it's lit by electric lights like everything in this town. She says, the lady can have this room, as she gestures to one of the doors. Then she turns to Ghost Eye. You take that one there, gesturing to another door. She walks a bit further and says, and you three can share this one. Hitoshi, John, and Lacey walk into the room. We see one bed, a chair, and a couch. Hitoshi says, I'm taking the bed. Before anyone can say anything, he puts his stuff down on it. We're going to cut to Christine's room. There's a knock at her door, and she goes to answer it. We see John standing there. He holds up a deck of cards. Want to play a game of cards? I'd like to talk. She says sure, and invites him in. They sit on the floor. John pulls out his card deck and deals their hands. They're going to play a game of poker. John says, nice place, huh? Sarcastically. Christine smiles. I found more than a few insects already, but it's an improvement over the last couple of days. John said, about anything would be, I reckon. Christine looks at her cards. I'll raise. She slides a coin between them. John grimaces, and I'll fold. He tosses his cards into the center, revealing a trash hand. He starts shuffling the deck and dealing again. Christine says, what did you want to talk about? What you said before, about family. Did you mean it? Christine said, I did. If I can ever be normal, well, all I've ever wanted is to have a family again, to restore what I lost. John asks her if there would be a place for him in it. She looks him in the eyes and says, of course, and that she regrets leaving him and that she missed him. John says that the feeling was mutual and that almost dying today put things in perspective for him, and that he wants to set things right before he dies. Christine says that she doesn't want him to die at all and that maybe they should just leave things as are if that's how it's going to be. John tells her that they played that out once and where's the fun in that now, and then he leans in and kisses her and we cut away. We're going to see the group leaving Hope Falls. Ghost Eye says, won't be long now. The maze is only a few days away. That's where the really difficult part begins. Crossing the mesas is no easy task. John says, great, at least we have something to look forward to. We're going to cut to the Guardian Angels. They enter Hope Falls, just on the heels of our heroes. The people watch them nervously. We see Leonard Cave right up to meet them. He says, welcome, gentlemen. What brings the Lost Angels here? Guardian Angel Grant says, we're looking for a devil worshipper, a gambler by the name of John Weber. He's joined up with a black-haired woman. Have you seen them? Leonard says, can't say that I've seen anyone like that. Sounds memorable enough. I think I'd remember. Guardian Angel Grant narrows his eyes and thumbs the gun in his waist. Are you sure? Leonard says, I reckon I am. And Renly says, very well, then we're just passing through. They move past Leonard into the town. Grant turns to Renly. He's lying to us. And Renly says, oh, I know, and he will pay soon. But we have no need for him. We see them continue until Carlos approaches them. Renly says, Carlos, we're looking for a man who carries cards and a woman with dark hair. Did they come from Tombstone in Kansas before that? Carlos asks. Renly says, they did. And Carlos says, then I've seen them. Left this morning not long past sunrise. Traveling with old Ghost Eye and Lacey O'Malley too. I recognized him from the papers. Guardian Angel Grant says, the newsman, he should already be dead. And Carlos says, well, he's not. Rinley says, "You did well, Carlos. Hold your post. Your call will be soon." Carlos says, "For the shepherd." And Rinley says, "For the flock." We see Carlos start to yell loudly so the bystanders can hear. "Tell me, friends, what word do you have of Santa Anna? Which way have you come?" Rinley says, "I'm afraid not. He's still in Mexico." Carlos says, "He's going to come clean up this country, you'll see. He'll spread order and law in God's image." Rinley says, "We'll see." We're going to see all the main characters around a campfire as the sun starts to set. John and Christine are holding hands, Hitoshi is sharpening his blade, and Lacey is trying to read by the firelight. The camera pulls out until we're focusing on a hill a bit away. We see the two guardian angels are perched on the hill. One has odd ghost rock binoculars that steam. Grant says, "Your man was good," as he looks through the binoculars. Lacey O'Malley is with them. Rinley says, "An unexpected windfall for us. I don't see the guide he called Ghost Eye, unless he's the one with the sword." Rinley says, "He must be. We'll wait for them to sleep. Kill the gambler first and the rest will die easily enough." Suddenly we're going to hear a gruff voice behind them. "You two, why are you following my group?" The two angels turn around just in time to see Ghost Eye Morrison standing behind them. Rinley says, "You travel with a devil worshipper. He uses tainted magic and playing cards." Ghost Eye says, "Devil worshipper, huh? And what do you know of the devil? You think that boy back there knows the devil? Someone as weak as him?" The guardian angels take a step back as a supernatural green fog begins to cover the night. Ghost Eye removes his eye patch slowly, and we can see that he has an eye beneath it. It's a cat's eye, and it glows bright yellow. Guardian Angel Grant says, "You're one of them, a friend of hell." Ghost Eye says, "I've seen the devil, and he's a lot more frightening than that boy, and he's much more frightening than you." Grant draws his gun and fires a bullet into Ghost Eye's chest. A small amount of blood trickles from it. Ghost Eye laughs. Grant fires 2 more shots, both hit him in the chest. Ghost Eye doesn't even react. "You think that will save you now?" Ghost Eye pulls his own pistol in a blur of motion. It has odd machinery worked all around it. He fires it and puts a bullet through the angel's head. We see his gun glows with blue smoke, and you can hear whispers of the dead through the curling smoke. I'll say you can see little faces appear in the smoke as though like there's dying souls inside of it. Rinley puts his hands up as soon as his compatriot hits the ground. "My friend there was a fool. Too new to this to understand the truth of all this. Look, I just want the gambler and the newsman. Let me take them quick and quiet. I'll pay you well. You'll have no more trouble from me or mine." Ghost Eye says, "Not interested. I'm warning you. I know what you are, and I want no part in this. Wait till they're not in my care before taking them. Follow me again, and you'll be a corpse like your friend. Then you'll really get to meet the devil. And trust me, friend, he's gonna love you. I'll be taking your horses." Ghost Eye turns away and slides his eye patch back on. He takes the horses with no resistance from the angel as we hear the song "Death Comes Riding" by the Twisted Hillbillies start to play. And that's where I'm going to end episode 3. We had quite a bit happen in this episode. We got introduced to Ghost Eye, and then we quickly realized that he's not everything he seems to be. There's something off with him. Maybe very off. We also got to see Hope Falls, a location in a couple modules, and some characters there. We got to see our first look at the Deadlands and some of the monsters that inhabit them. And we got some good character building stuff. We got to see the Native Americans too, who are a big part of Deadlands lore, which I have not tapped into too often in this particular series. And that's for good reason. I think I want to save the Native American stuff for the season 2 of this if I write it. And they just didn't really fit into this story I'm particularly telling here in the world. That being said, we will see the Native Americans more in the sequel series if I write it, and they are very important to Deadlands. So I thought it would be fun to just kind of give us a little peek here. Hey, thanks for watching, folks. I just want to thank everyone again for all the love I'm getting on this channel. It means a lot to me, and so yeah, hope to see y'all in the next one. Hi, I am Bjorn, and welcome back to the Wild West. Today we're doing another episode of Deadlands. That's right, this is episode 4. This is actually a really big episode. A lot of the twists of the series are going to be revealed in this one, so make sure you stay to the end. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. I'm not going to use up too much of your time. I'm going to go mosey on over to the separate recording room where I'm going to read the script. See y'all there. Hey, quick reminder that this is in fact episode 4 of a series. If you have not watched at least episodes 1 through 3, I would highly recommend going back and watching those, as they are necessary to understanding the context of this episode. I am titling episode 4, The City of Lost Angels. We're going to open on a Japanese city and around the same time period as Deadlands, obviously like 30 years beforehand. I don't know, like 1850 maybe. It burns and we can see warriors fighting in the streets. The camera moves through the fighting until we reach the palace. We see a lone samurai climbing the stairs. We see it's a much younger Hitoshi. We see him enter the palace. Inside, a long hall leads to a throne. A man sits on it and laughs to himself insanely. Hitoshi approaches him. This is Hitoshi's brother Nero. Nero sits on his throne and says, "Brother, isn't it beautiful?" Hitoshi says, "You have let the blade consume you. You have freed the evil trapped within it." And Nero says, "You do not understand. I am saving this shogunate. Without the power of the sword, we would have fallen. Now they die en masse before us." He thrusts his hands out. Hitoshi says, "Seal it away. Father made you swear to never use that power. You dishonor his legacy." Nero says, "Why would I do that? Think, brother. With this power, not even the Emperor can stand against us. We will rule Japan." Hitoshi's face turns to anguish. He draws his sword and says, "You're already too far gone." Nero stands. He holds out his own sword. It oozes with red mist. Nero says, "It is you who has gone too far. You draw your blood against your own kin. You are shogun. I will take your head." They're gonna fight. I'm not gonna really describe the fight. You know, it's a cool samurai sword fight. I would let stunt people, whatever, come up with the action. But Hitoshi is going to win barely, despite some of the strange powers the sword has. His brother dies on the floor from a wound to the heart. As he dies, Hitoshi picks the blade up. As soon as he touches it, a demon made from black smoke appears before him. It has fearsome claws and red eyes. It says, "You fight well. Nero was a fool, but we could do great things." Hitoshi doesn't reply. The demon slithers towards him. Its black claws caress Hitoshi's cheeks. "They will banish you for this. You are a kinslayer now. You will have no home. But if you use my power, you could take it all." Hitoshi says, "I banish you. Return to the blade. You are free no longer." The demon snarls and is pulled into the sword. The red mist leaking from the blade retracts into it. It's a normal sword once more. Hitoshi puts the sword into its sheath, and we cut to the present. We see Hitoshi sitting at a fire with the others. He's sharpening his sword. It's the same sword his brother carried. We hear the whispers of the demon in his head. It begs to be released and offers him its power. Lastly, we hear the demon chuckle and then say, "She'll die where she's going. Maybe you'll use my power then. I know you care too much." Hitoshi whispers to the sword, "I will never use your power." We hear cackling laughter from the demon. And we're going to cut to the intro, which I don't think I've ever actually brought this up, but the intro song for my show, hypothetically, would be the song "People Are Strange" by Dead South. It's a cover of the original. It's pretty good, and it pretty much covers the entire franchise as a tone to me. And we're going to cut to the maze. We see the party crossing rope bridges over one of the cracked mesas that make it up. On the mesa ahead, we can see an old lighthouse. Its light shines over the maze. We see them arrive at the lighthouse. They enter through an old door. Everything looks pretty run down and is covered in mold. We see John slide his pistol from his holster as he enters. John calls out, "Who's here? Show yourself." Ghost Eye looks him over and smiles. "This is Van Horn's light," he says. "It's abandoned. I can promise you no one else will come here." John says, "What about the light? Someone had to turn it on." Ghost Eye says, "There's no one else here. Feel free to look. Van Horn set it up before he died. Can't say I know how it works, though." John turns and looks at Christine. She shrugs. He slides his pistol into its holster. Ghost Eye turns and looks at them and says, "This lighthouse is as far as I go. You have until sundown a week and a half from now to meet me here. It's a hard place to miss if you're lost in the maze. If you're not here, I'll leave. I won't be back until I bring the next group. If you're still alive, I'll take you back then." John turns to Lacey O'Malley. "How far is it to the City of Lost Angels?" he asks. Lacey says, "I couldn't say for sure. Not far, I would think." Ghost Eye says, 2 days. Follow the bridge north. They all lead to the city." Christine says, "We can worry about the city tomorrow. I'm exhausted. I'm going to hit the sack." We're going to cut to the City of Lost Angels. We see Guardian Angel Rinley, our Guardian Angel from the previous episodes, enter the city. We see other angels walking in the street mixed with normal citizens. Rinley works his way to the giant stone church that sits in the center of the city. He enters and finds an angel. Rinley points to him and says, "You, send word that I need an audience with Reverend Grimm." The angel says, "With Grimm?" Rinley says, "Yes." The angel nods his head and disappears for a while. He returns and gestures for Rinley to follow. Rinley does. The angel leads him to a door and beckons him to go in. Rinley says, "This isn't Grimm's office." The angel says, "You are to go in and ask no questions." Rinley looks unsure, but cautiously opens the door. Inside, he's met with the guardian angel who sits at a desk. Unlike the others, his robes are black. A metal scythe sits on his desk. He fingers its sharpened edge with impatience, and this is going to be the second guy who acts like a reaper and carries a scythe I've written in the last little bit. It's a complete coincidence, but I find it kind of a funny coincidence. Angel Rinley says, "Guardian Black." He bows with reverence. Guardian Black says, "You do not use my real name. Call me as I am. Now take a seat." Rinley says, "Guardian Black, And Guardian Black replies, cutting him off, "Did I misspeak? You call me as I am." Rinley says, "You're the angel of death." And Guardian Black says, "So I am. Now take a seat." Rinley does. Guardian Black says, "You arrived to this city without your partner. Now you asked to speak with Reverend Grimm. Tell me, where is Guardian Grant?" Rinley says, "He's dead. Killed by a harrowed man." Guardian Black smiles. It's the smile of a cat that's caught a mouse. "How do you live? Somehow I doubt that you managed to kill a harrowed." Rinley says, He let me go. Guardian Grant thought it prudent to fire a weapon at the man. He died for it." Guardian Black replies, "You were supposed to be a high-ranking guardian. You're a coward. Did you really think this news was worthy of Reverend Grimm? I think you need to learn how I earned my name." He slides his hand closer to the scythe at the desk. Rinley says, "There's more," desperately. "A man and a woman, John Weber. He's a gambler with ties to the devil. He's on the list. We hunted him, but he escaped." Black says, "Is there a point to this, Guardian Rinley?" Rinley says, "He's coming here, to the City of Lost Angels. And he's not alone neither. He's with that Harrod and Lacey O'Malley." Guardian Black stops at that. "The news, man," Rinley says, "The very same. There's a woman with him, too. She's tainted the same as him." "Why would they come here if they know they're being hunted by us?" Guardian Black asks. Rinley says, "I don't know. That's why I thought it would be wise to warn the Reverend." Black nods. He stands from his place at his desk and picks up his scythe. We see Guardian Rinley reflected in its blade. Guardian Black asks, "So you're afraid of the Harrowed?" He begins to unbutton his shirt, slowly. He opens it up, revealing a festering bullet wound through his heart. "Why aren't you running in fear?" he asks. "Am I not as frightening as this other?" Rinley stammers, You're frightening." Black says, "So as I understand it, you hunted a devil worshipper and failed to capture him. You allowed him to grow close to the City of Lost Angels. You left your partner to be killed by a harrowed. Lastly, you ran from the same man like a coward." Rinley is terrified now. He's shaking. "You don't understand. I'm still of use. I can help you." Black asks, "How is that?" And Rinley says, "I've seen John Weber's face. I can find him if he's here. Without me, you wouldn't be able to find him." Black stops and thinks for a moment, then nods. He carefully sets the scythe back on the table. He buttons his shirt back up and says, "A fair argument. Find him, or I will kill you. I will make it so agonizingly painful that even hell will seem tame by comparison. Trust me, I would know." Rinley nods. He says, "I'll find him." We're going to cut back to Van Horn's Light. We see the party leaving the lighthouse. We hear the song Ghost Riders in the Sky by Johnny Cash play as they travel. We're going to get a montage of them crossing the maze. We're not actually going to spend too much time in the maze. As much as I could make a ton of material for the group sort of moving through the maze, it would be very similar to the last episode, as in like people just crossing the Deadlands and encountering creatures. which works as far as an RPG adaptation, but I think to make television, you kind of have to avoid it. So we're just going to sort of see some things that are, I think, standouts of the maze. We'll see a couple of ghost rock miners dangling from ropes to mine the sides of the canyons. As the group crosses a dangling wooden bridge, we see some maze dragons swimming in the ocean below. Maze dragons are basically giant sea serpents that have appeared after the quake of '68. They come through the ruins of an old city. Christine stops and studies one of the buildings. She says, "I know this place." She hurries ahead, occasionally stopping and looking at various buildings. Eventually, she comes to a building that's been split by a canyon. We recognize it as her house from the flashback in episode 2. Hitoshi says, "Oh, hell." John looks at him. "What?" Hitoshi says, "It's her home." John looks at the house and says, "You're kidding." Hitoshi says, "I don't joke about such things." Christine enters the building. Lacey says, "That doesn't look very stable. Isn't that dangerous, Miss Moon?" She ignores Lacey. John follows her in quickly, and Hitoshi follows him. Lacey looks around at the maze, then walks in after them with reluctance. We see them move through the rotten building. The floor is cracked and moss and mold grow everywhere. Christine stops and studies a torn family portrait. We can see her mother and her father. John says, "Damn, you really were rich." And Christine says, "I was, for a time." She makes her way to the living room where the fissure runs through the building. Christine walks to the edge and looks down. It's all darkness, just like she remembers. Christine says, "Who has the rope?" John says, "What?" Christine says, "Rope. You know, for climbing." John says, "You can't be serious. That's downright stupid." Hitoshi says, "John's right for once. This is too dangerous." Christine says, "This is where she fell to her death. The heart of darkness fell with her. It could be down there." John says, "I've heard stories of what lurks in the maze, Christine. Who knows what's down there?" Lacey says, "If that's a genuine question, I do have a few ideas." John turns to him with a scowl and says, "What do you think, newsman?" Lacey holds up his hands as if in acquiescence. Christine says, "John, I know more about this place than most. I'm going down." John sighs and pulls a rope from his bag. Christine reaches for it, but he pulls it away. He says, "I'll go." Christine says, "What?" John says, "If your mother fell down there, I think it's better if you don't see that." "I'll go down, damn it all. I reckon I'm a fool for it." Christine hands John a lantern. "Then you'll need this." We see John tie a rope onto the sturdy pillar. He tosses the rope down into the chasm. He lights up the lantern and begins to climb down the rope. As he goes, we see claw marks running down the cliff face. He stops and studies them. A feeling of unease grows. What's down in this chasm that could have left a mark like that? As he climbs down, he reaches a lip in the cliff. He holds out his lantern, and we can see Christine's mother's corpse at the bottom. It's nothing but skeleton with bits of dried cloth from her clothing. He starts to search the body, but strange insects scurry out from the bones and head down into the canyon. It startles John, and he almost goes over the edge. He stops and looks over the edge and holds out his lantern. He picks up a bone from the body and wraps it in cloth. Using the lantern, he lights it, creating a torch. He tosses it down into the chasm below. The torch falls until we can see that there's nothing but ocean water at the bottom. John lets out a little huff. He keeps searching the body but finds nothing, only broken bones and fabric. The heart of darkness is not there. John grabs the rope and climbs back to the surface. As soon as he's up, he says, "It's not there." Christine says, "The angels have taken it." "I'm right." John says, "Or it went over the edge into the sea." "How would the angels know to find it here, Christine? It don't make no sense." Christine says, "I don't believe that. They have it, John. I'm sure of it." John throws his hands up and gives up the argument. Lacey says, "It's getting dark. I say we stop here for the night." Christine says, "That's a good idea." John says, "I'll make a fire. You got plenty of old rotten shit around here to burn." Christine makes a scowl at him and he just smiles back mischievously. We're going to cut to Christine's old bedroom. We see her walk into it. The rotten floorboards creak beneath her feet as she walks. We see her study the old dolls she left behind as a girl. John enters the room behind her. He looks around and says, "Nice place. A bit youthful for my taste." Christine says, "It's surreal to be back. I never thought I'd get to see this room again." John says, "That makes two of us. I never thought I'd go to the maze." Christine asks him, "Have you ever gone back to your childhood home?" John says, "Nah, nothing left to go back to." Christine says, "You've never really talked about it." John says, "For good reason, not pleasant memories." Christine asks, "You ever wonder why God is so cruel to us? I reckon we deserve it now, but then..." We were just kids. John says, I don't think God had much to do with it. Sometimes cruel things just happen to good folk. He stops and thinks about that and then says, Christine, I wanted to talk to you. Christine says, we're talking right now. John says, fair enough. You're so sure the stone is with the angels. What if it ain't? She says, it is. It has to be. And John says, but if it ain't, what happens then? Christine says, then I keep looking. Anywhere it could be. John says, why are you so damned obsessed? Just let it be. Christine says, I can't just let it be, John. And he asks, why? And she says, because my curse is getting worse. Before we started traveling together, I had a night where I almost turned. John says, and? Christine says, it wasn't a full moon. I reckon it's only a matter of time before the wolf consumes me completely. My mother used to tell me stories of it. It happened to our ancestors before we discovered the stone. John says, I won't let that happen. We'll find another way. And Christine says, the stone is the way, and we're going to find it. We'll cut to the morning. We see the group start to leave the house. Christine takes a book from the shelf. It's in pretty poor condition, but it's the only book still intact. She stores it in her bag. They start their travels again. We see a wide landscape shots of them traveling the maze. Soon, the city comes into view as the afternoon sun hangs high. The city is massive. Half of it faces the ocean, and the other half faces the cracked mesas. A giant tent city surrounds the outskirts of the town. Near the center of the city, the buildings turn to stone instead of wood, and at its very center, a gigantic chapel stands resolute. John says, they built this in the maze? Lacey says, it surprised me too when I first saw it. Follow me. I got a friend in the city. He pulls a hat tight to hide his face. They follow Lacey through the city. They enter the shanty town that makes up the outer ring of the city. As they walk, skinny, starving men watch them through cracks in wooden walls of the homes. The place has fallen apart and looms with a sense of desperation. Suddenly a man steps out into the street. He's wearing tattered clothes and has a glazed look in his eye. He holds up a large Bowie knife. He charges at the group like a madman, screaming as he does. John pulls his pistol and shoots the man dead. The bullet goes right through his head. He says, holy hell, he's some kind of maniac. Christine says, look at the bastard. He's bone skinny. Lacey says, he was starving. This whole place has gone to hell. John looks around. People are watching him from windows and alleyways. He gestures the gun around, and they all shy back. But only just. He gets the sense that they might come out at any moment. Hitoshi says, we need to go. Lacey points to an alley and says, this way. They move towards the center of the city. As they leave, people slither from the buildings and begin to fight each other for the body. They stab each other and rip at the body itself, desperate for anything to eat. Christine says, oh Christ, I didn't think it'd be like this. John says, it's a nightmare. The sooner we get out of here, the better. They enter a new district closer to the center. The buildings here are nicer and more put together, yet there's still a sense of unease, like the city just isn't right. As they walk, we see guardian angels occasionally milling about the city. Miners carry large chunks of ghost rock into buildings to get appraisals. We can also see bits of ghost rock machinery everywhere. The city has electricity powered by ghost rock. Lacey eventually walks up to a house. He knocks on the door. A woman opens it. She looks over at Lacey and her face turns into a strong scowl. She says, Lacey O'Malley, what in God's green earth are you doing here? Hurry up and come in, they're looking for you. Lacey comes into the house and the others follow behind. Lacey says, what do you mean they're looking for me? The woman named Annabelle says, I mean, word's been sent around the city that you were coming. There's not a guardian angel in the city that doesn't know your name. I'm assuming one of you is John Weber. John holds up his hand and says, I am. They're looking for me too? Annabelle says, and her, although they don't know your name yet, miss. Lacey says, how do they know we're here? Annabelle says, couldn't say, but you're in a heap of shit. They're watching the roads. It's a miracle they didn't spot you on the way in. Hitoshi says, or they did. John draws his gun. He says, yeah, that thought just occurred to me too. He peeks through a window. We can see people moving through the streets, but no guardian angels are anywhere in sight. Christine says, it's a slight wrinkle to the plan. We'll have to move at night. Get closer to the chapel under cover of darkness. Annabelle says, the chapel? You're mad. That's the last place you want to be. Lacey says, they came to rob Grimm. They want to steal something from him. The stone your sister saw. Annabelle says, "You're more than mad then. No one messes with Grimm, and for good reason. He's fought demons and won. I've seen it. That's not to mention all the angels. It just can't be done." They all fall silent for a while. Lacey breaks the silence. He says, "The city has gotten worse." Annabelle says, "You don't know the half of it, Lacey. Food's getting scarcer, and Grimm ain't feeding us like he used to. The fields, the crops, all been failing. It's only a matter of time before the starvation boils over. What's worse, they've been finding bodies up in the beach. All the guts removed and sliced open all clean like. They say we got a ripper like they got in London. And there's demons lurking in the night, snatching people off the streets. Even the houses aren't safe anymore. The last few weeks, the demons started dragging people from their own beds." Hitoshi says, "The demons are killing people? Why don't the angels do anything?" Annabelle says, "That's the question. Most accept these are just the ones that Grimm missed. But he hadn't killed them yet. Can't say why. I'm worried that Grimm can't kill these. I've heard the devil himself has taken up residence in this city." John says, "Why are you still here if it's so bad?" Annabelle says, "I got nowhere else to go. This place is everything I have in the world. My husband lost his life mining the ghost rock that put me here. I won't just throw it away." Lacey says, "Annabelle, your sister mentioned a map in her last letter. She said she left it with you in case something happened to her. Could we see it?" Annabelle says, "That silly mission of hers. It was her snooping for you that got her killed. I should have burned it, God above." "I'll give you the map, but I want no part in the rest of this. I'll wind up hanging like she did." Annabelle stands up and fishes the letter from a box on the mantle. She hands it to Lacey. Lacey studies it. Christine asks, "What is it?" And Lacey replies, "A map of the whole city. She found tunnels running beneath the whole place, a sewer system of sorts. She thought we could use it to get into the chapel." Christine says, "With sewers to move through, we could avoid damn near all the angels. I bet they won't even have it guarded. They think it's a secret." Hitoshi says, "That might work, although there's still some risk. We aren't even sure the tunnels lead to the chapel." John says, "If they do, it definitely makes what we came here to do a hell of a lot easier." There's a sudden commotion outside. We hear yelling and shouting. The group moves to the windows. We see crowds of people swarming. The guardian angels are trying to keep the peace. Hitoshi says, "What's the meaning of this?" Annabelle says, "There've been riots all day. Demon took a kid last night through a window. Whole bunch of folks saw it as it drugged the boy off. Real wicked shape with horns and the like. The people are upset at the angels for not doing nothing. This whole city is close to boiling over." Suddenly gunshots ring out. We see the angels shooting people in the streets. The protesters scatter as they run for their lives. We hear screams and see a few men lying on the streets dying. The angels execute them on the ground, then drag their bodies off. Annabelle muses as she watches the catastrophe unfold. This whole place is a powder keg and a match factory. You folk don't want to be anywhere near it when it blows. John says, "If we're doing this, it has to be tonight. Miss Leary is right. This city is too dangerous to stay in for long." The others nod in agreement. Cut to the chapel. We see Ezekiel Grimm looking over papers at his desk. He looks almost exactly like he does in the source material. You know, a priest with gray hair and mutton chops. Angel Black enters the room. Ezekiel looks up. He says, "Oh, it's only you, Black. What's with all the chaos?" Black says, "It's nothing. A small uprising in the outer ring. There was a demon spotted last night. It took a young girl from a room in plain view of some low folk." Grimm scoffs. "I've let the lesser guardians handle this for too long. The lot of them are incompetent fools. I'll take the hunt personally tonight." Black says, "I'll let the others know." Grimm says, "Is that what the guardian asked to speak with me about? Odd thing that. They usually are too afraid to even ask for me." Black says, "No, that was another matter. A man by the name of John Weber, one of the devil worshippers on our list, was seen on his way here with the newsman Lacey O'Malley." Grimm stops what he's doing and looks up. "O'Malley's in my city?" Black says, "So the angel claims. We have search parties looking for him, but they haven't found anything yet." Grimm says, "You have to find him. Lacey O'Malley is the biggest threat to us there is. The things he's been saying in the paper. Black, he's close." Black says, "We'll find him. We always do. Sooner or later, he'll turn up in a house. Grimm says, Annabelle Leary. He'll be with Annabelle Leary. Black says, what? The newsman was close with her sister. She's bound to be the only friend he still has left in the city. Annabelle's been quite the thorn in my side, but never so bad as to warrant a hanging like her sister. If I recall, she has a house in the second ring. Black nods and says, I'll check it personally. We cut back to Annabelle's house. We see John Weber shuffle his deck of cards. Christine sits far away in the corner, cleaning her handgun. Lastly, we see Hitoshi sharpening his katana. As he does, we hear sinister whispering from the blade. The demon whispers, you know they can't stop it. They're going to die to the demon. You know what we are capable of. But with my power, you can save her, Hitoshi. Hitoshi ignores the whispering and slides the blade back into its sheath. He looks over and sees John shuffling his cards. He says, I can't figure you out. And John says, not many can. Hitoshi says, I thought you would have already left us already. Help me understand. Why are you still here? Is this really all for Christine? John says, no, that's not it. Not exactly. Christine's here looking for something. I'm the same. She's looking for her legacy. Hitoshi says, and you? John says, I'm looking for a family. It's all I want. I found it with her once, and I think I can find it once more. Hitoshi nods and says, a noble goal. John asks, what about you? Why are you here? Hitoshi sighs. He says, I suppose I'm here for honor, if I still have any. Call it duty if I don't. John says, see, that don't make much sense to me. Honor's worth a flame in hell out here. Hitoshi says, you're wrong, John Weber. Honor is worth everything. It is the measure of a man's soul. Without it, we'd be little more than animals. John says, let me tell you, there ain't much honor to go around. All the men out here are animals. Those that aren't don't last long. Honor and duty are a one-way trip to a shallow grave. There's a sudden knock at the door. Annabelle looks up with fear. John stands up and slides his pistol out of its holster. In his other hand, we see him grip his deck of cards. Christine says, what do we do? Annabelle says, I've got an escape hatch under the rug. Go! I can't be seen with you. John kicks over the rug and finds the hatch. He climbs down. The door bangs again. Annabelle shouts, just a minute, I'm coming. Christine and Hitoshi climb down the hatch. Lacey turns to Annabelle. Are you going to be all right? He asks. Annabelle says, I'll be fine. Now go. Lacey climbs down the hatch. Annabelle covers it with the rug again. She opens the door to her house. We see Guardian Angel Black standing in the doorway. In one hand, he holds a scythe. He says, Miss Leary, I presume. She says, yes, studying the scythe. Can I help you? We're going to hear the rest of this through the floor as the group sneaks through the tunnel to the outside of her house. So picture kind of like that sequence at the beginning of Inglourious Bastards where we see it shot from the floorboards from the perspective of the Jews in that movie. Something a little bit like that. Angel Black says, an old friend of yours has entered our city. I would like to find him. Annabelle says, and who would that be? Black says, Lacey O'Malley. I know you've had him here. If he's still here, I'll find him. If you just tell me where he is, you will face no consequences. I swear it. Annabelle says, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen Lacey O'Malley in damn near 4 years now. Not since he got my sister killed. You should know he's no friend of mine. Black nods his head and then turns and smiles. He says, I don't believe you. He turns to two of his angels that stand beside him. You two, search the house. He points to the last one and says, you, watch the back. They may try to escape. We see Hitoshi exit a small covered passage. He squeezes up to the side of the house and carefully draws his sword. As the angel sent to guard the back walks past, Hitoshi sticks the sword through his neck. He presses his hand against the man's mouth to hide any noise. The angel falls against the floor with blood running from his mouth. Hitoshi waves the others out. They exit the tunnel and run down the alley. We're going to cut back to Annabelle's house. Black says, so you haven't seen him. You're sure that's the answer you want to give me? Annabelle says, it's the truth. The two angels sent to search the house walk up. They say, it's empty. No one else is here. Angel Black calls out to the man in the back. He says, is anyone out back? There's no response. Black walks over and finds the dead body. He returns to Annabelle with a frown on his face. See, I knew you were lying to me, and you're gonna regret it. You two, take her to the chapel. I will see that she tells us the truth personally. They were here after all. I need 20 angels. We search this area block by block. I want Lacey O'Malley and his cohorts found. We're going to cut and see that evening is starting to fall. We see John and the others avoiding angels in a prolonged stealth sequence where they sneak around the houses and maybe kill 1 or 2 angels. I'm not really going to describe this scene just to save time and, keep everything sort of straightforward. But it's a cool little sequence, Eventually, they're going to reach the entrance of the sewer they found in the map. John says, I see no choice. They won't find us here. They're going to climb into the sewer tunnels. Dangling lanterns hang down the entire tunnel. They emit dim light, just enough to fight the darkness, but not enough to fully light the tunnel. So the whole area is kind of atmospheric. They're powered by cables that run with the lantern. The whole tunnel system is powered by electricity. Lacey says, remarkable. This must have cost a fortune. John asks, why would they pay for this? Christine says, I don't know. And Hitoshi says, does it matter? John says, don't know, it might. Could mean this tunnel is what we hope it is. Christine says, it could be a way into the chapel, an escape tunnel set up by the Lost Angels. Lacey says, that would make sense. I don't know how Cass found this place, but I owe her. They move through the tunnels. They reach a section of the tunnel where they notice scratch marks running along the walls. John studies them. What leaves something like this? Christine says, probably the same thing that left this. She holds up her hands and reveals a wet blood trail. Hitoshi says, demons. They are using the sewer. Lacey's eyes light up with fear. Oh my god. Then we're in serious danger. Hitoshi says, the newsman is right. Demons are not something to be toyed with. John says, what? Have you run into them before? And Hitoshi says, I have. They are vile and evil, but most of all, they are deadly. Christine says, you've never told me about a demon. Hitoshi says, it's not something I like to remember. It is a burden I do not wish you to bear. John says, well, we can't turn back. The angels are looking for us something fierce. If we leave these tunnels, they'll find us for sure. Suddenly, we hear the sound of scraping echo through the sewers. The group turns and sees a shadow passing by one of the lanterns down the hall. They quickly duck behind whatever they can, but it isn't enough. They're in the open. They're exposed. The shadow is monstrous. We can see horns twisting its form and razor-sharp claws. It's huge, and it's carrying something over its shoulder, but we can't make it out. On pure instinct, John draws a card. It's the 8 of clubs. The group turns invisible. In a quick burst of green light, the creature turns and stares towards them. We can't really get a good look at it as it's covered in shadow. It studies the tunnel for a little bit, then moves on. Hitoshi gestures that they should move. John nods and the invisibility falls away. Christine says, I told you not to draw anymore. And John says, well, shit, I didn't really see much of a choice. Lacey says, that is remarkable. You must teach me how you do that. And John says, trust me, you don't want to know. The tunnel they're following leads to a large room. It's filled with ghost rock machinery. It hums and hisses. Steam exits and puffs. They're attached to a metal wall. We can see a steel door is set there. Lacey says, this is it. This is the vault Cass described. This is another side than what she saw. We must be underneath the chapel. John cautiously approaches the door. He turns the knob and finds that it's unlocked. Not really much of a vault, he says. He opens the door. The room beyond is dark. It isn't lit by lanterns. Mist curls from the bottom of the doorframe. John eyes it oddly. Christine holds her hand to her nose. Ugh, what is that smell? John, who's recoiling as well, says, I don't know. He pulls out one of the hand lanterns and lights it. He holds it out and enters the room cautiously. We can see mist continue to curl out through the door. The humming of the ghost rock machinery is louder. There's a machine in here as well. He holds his lantern out and comes face to face with a dangling corpse. Its face is pale white, drained of blood. He lets out a slight shout and falls back. We can see his breath. The room is refrigerated by a ghost rock machine, a gigantic walk-in freezer. Everywhere he turns, corpses dangle. Everywhere he turns his lantern light, corpses dangle. Christine asks, is it the heart, John? He says, no, it's a goddamn slaughterhouse. There have to be 100 bodies here. We gotta leave. As soon as he says it, we hear scraping from down the sewer hall once more. Christine's face turns to one of horror. Hitoshi pushes Christine and Lacey into the room. John quickly turns out the lantern. We hear scraping into the refrigerated room. Suddenly, overhead ghost lock-powered lights kick on. Our heroes are hiding behind bodies that have been gutted like a cow's at the butcher's. Exactly how Annabelle described the bodies on the beaches. A 7-foot-tall monster climbed into the room through the tunnel. It's got a deer skull for a face with large horns. Its body is hairy and it has large claws. The white fur that makes up its body has been covered in blood. It's got another body slumped over its shoulder. It's a young woman. We don't recognize her. It walks over and hangs the body on a meat hook upside down. Then it sets something down on a podium. It's the Heart of Darkness. The stone is covered in this strange metal construct covered in runes, as it was in the flashback earlier. The creature twists some of the runes together and spins the metal apparatus, and the heart begins to glow. The creature shrinks down until we can see its true form. It's Ezekiel Grimm. Grimm is a Wendigo. He handled this hunt personally. We hear the western cover of Thriller by Honeywagon play as we cut to credits. So obviously there's a couple of hints of this twist early on. The demons the people have been seeing are actually the guardian angels, who are Wendigos. They have been harvesting bodies, which is obviously how the people of the city of Los Angeles have been miraculously fed by Grimm, as mentioned in several previous episodes.
Wow, what an episode. I'm outro Bjorn now. Hello, I'm the outro guy. And whoa, what a twist. Oh my god, they're cannibals. Ezekiel Grimm is a Wendigo. Oh my god. What a twist that if you've played Deadlands before, you probably knew. The next episode is going to be a very exciting one. It's going to keep the momentum from this episode. We're getting into the action, the sort of third act, if you will. The second half of episode 5 will begin the third act of the story, which will carry over to episode 6. So, remember to like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think is going to happen next. Give me your thoughts. If you hated the episode, let me know why, so I can tell you that you're wrong, you're smelly, and you're stinky. Everyone is. It's the Wild West, so don't feel too bad about it. You know, it's perfectly okay. All right, I will see y'all on the next one. If you need something to watch right now, you know, Thunderbolts, Suicide Squad.
Please, look, I've only been in one. You gotta give me more time. They'll love me. They'll love me, please. Please.
Sorry, Will. Ain't nothing be done about it. You were voted the least popular member of the Massacast, and as we said on the poll, you're to be executed.
I wanna die. Please.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. I was just executing the least popular member of the Massacast. Hi, I'm Bjorn. Welcome back to Deadlands. We're doing episode 5. It's been like 4 months since I uploaded this because I'm lazy and I don't care about my work. Let's just get into it. We're done. This is just a reminder that this is episode 5 of the show. If you haven't seen 1 through 4, I would extremely highly recommend going back and watching those. I know it's a lot of content, but hey, you clicked on this video, so you're clearly interested. So go ahead and take a look at that if it intrigues you. Annotation will be in the corner of the video. I am going to title episode 5 of Deadlands, The Joker. We open on the maze. A group of ragged, starving men move through the cracked mesas. We see text that says 1868. As the small group of men move, a man stumbling in the back falls to the ground. The group stops. A man bends over to check on the fallen man. We see it's a younger Angel Black. He says, "He's gone, Grimm. Dropped right dead." The other men gather around. They're all desperately starving and bone skinny, skinnier than any man should ever be. A man forces his way through the crowd. He's dressed as a preacher. It's a younger Ezekiel Grimm. He says, "Oh, Harris. He's with God now." A crowd member yells, "What should we do with the body, Reverend?" Grimm says, "We'll bury him and mark his place with God." Someone else cries, "What of his flesh?" Another man says, "We're starving. Don't you see, this is a gift from God. He's given food." Another crowd member yells, "Yes, we'll eat him and bury the bones when we're done." They all start to fight each other to reach the body. We hear a gunshot. It's Black. He shoots the pistol in the air. He says, "The good Reverend is in charge here. It's his decision to make." Grimm says, "I must pray on this. These are dark things you ask of me." He walks off and finds a place in the maze to pray. He falls to bone-skinny knees. He says, "God, please show me the way. If this is truly what you desire, give me a sign. My men are dying of hunger, and opportunity has presented itself. Let me know if this is the work of the devil or your salvation for us weary souls." There's nothing. No answer from God. Grimm tries again. He says, "Please, God, Just one sign. Just a whisper. In the silence that follows, it comes. We hear whispers in the wind. They're faint and eerie. They echo 100 times over in 10 different voices for each word. They say, "Survive at any cost. Live and spread my word. The reckoning is at hand." Grimm's eyes grow wide. He says, "Your will be done, king above kings." He stands and walks back to the others. He stands on a rock and proclaims, "God has spoken to me. He's shown me the path to our salvation. Black, start a fire." The men all cheer. We see the sun set as a few men gather around the fire. We see their silhouettes eating the meal they've cooked. One by one they begin to fall over. We see them scream and writhe in pain. They begin to strike monstrous forms with long, sharp claws and deer antlers for heads. By cannibalizing, they've become wendigos. We're going to cut to the present. We see John and the others are still hiding among the bodies in the meat freezer. We see Grimm looking around the room with pride. He takes some colorful yarn and ties markers on 20 or so of the bodies. When he's done, he leaves the freezer, Heart of Darkness, in his hand. Christine says, "Oh hell, what is this?" Lacey says, "It's like livestock." John says, "For who?" Lacey thinks for a moment. "Oh my God. For the city. The food he gives out. He's making them all cannibals." Christine says, "Why?" John says, "I don't know, but I reckon it don't take a genius to figure out that we don't want to know. Given the circumstances, I think we need to get out of here." Christine says, "No, we have to follow him." Christine starts to make for the exit. John says, "What?" He grabs her hand. "Have you lost your goddamn mind?" he asks. Christine says, "He has the stone, John. I need it." John says, "Christine, the man is literally a monster. It ain't worth your life." Christine looks at John with stubbornness in her eyes. She says, "This is my chance, John. I'm gonna take it, with or without the rest of you." She heads out the door. Hichoshi quickly follows her without a second thought. John says, "Women. Fuck." He follows her too. Only Lacey is left. He looks around at all the bodies and sighs. He follows the others. We're going to cut to the church's dungeon. We see Annabelle Leary hanging from a pole by her hands. She looks exhausted and scared. We hear ominous footsteps echoing in the distance. The sound of a metal door opening and shutting. Guardian Black is in the room with her. She looks up, trembling with fear. She says, "I'm already dead, Angel. You've got no power over me. No matter what I say here, I hang." Black nods. "Oh, you'll hang. But I do have power over you. I control when you die. You see, they call me the Angel of Death. This is because I have died once already." He unbuttons a button on his shirt. "Died and burned in hell for my sins." He unbuttons even more of his shirt. He pulls it back to reveal a bullet hole through his heart. "You might not believe it, but hell spat me out. It left me with a purpose, you see. Countless men have shot me, but I don't die anymore. I am the Grim Reaper. I am the avatar of death. As such, I control when your soul goes to hell. Until I allow it, your very existence will be agony." He picks up a knife from a table. "I would start trying to convince me to show you mercy. The hangman would be a blessing for you." We're going to cut back to John and Christine. We follow Christine and the others as they follow Grimm through the church. They hide around corners and evade the angels. This will be a little set piece. At one point, Grimm is met by two angels in the hall. The first angel says, "Reverend, there was another uprising last night in the outer ring." Grimm asks, "Is it finished?" The second angel says, "Yes, Reverend. 5 dead in all." Grimm asks, "Any of ours?" And the second angel replies, "No." Grimm says, "And the bodies?" The angel says, "They were recovered, Reverend." Grimm says, "Good, good. In the refrigeration room, you'll find marked bodies. The people hunger enough to riot, so let them eat." The second angel says, "As you say, Reverend." Grimm moves on, and the group carefully avoids the two angels. After they pass, the group hurries after Grimm. John whispers as they walk, "Jesus, are they all in on it?" Lacey says, "It sure seems that way." Eventually, Grimm comes to a door guarded by an angel. Grimm says, Angel? The guardian angel says, Reverend, returning the heart? Grimm says, I am. And the guardian angel says, how was the hunt? Grimm says, good. It's been too long since I took it myself. Grimm enters the room and comes out after a couple of minutes. He no longer has the heart in his hand. Grimm says, have a good night, to the angel. The angel replies with, you too, Ezekiel. Christine smiles as Grimm leaves the angel on duty. She nods to Hitoshi, then to the guard. Hitoshi nods in understanding. He waits for the angel to look away, then creeps up on him. He draws his sword and sticks it through the man's neck. He puts a hand over the angel's mouth and drags him into the room. After a few moments, he waves them in. They all enter the room and find a library. The Heart of Darkness isn't anywhere obvious. The room is just filled with books and a small table. The table is covered with a few papers and a small journal. Lacey picks up the journal and looks at it. This is Grimm's own diary. He reads through the notebook aloud while the others search the room. Our ritual was a success. As the reckoners promised, the lives we took during the church's demon massacre were a sufficient sacrifice to imbue my podium with raw black magic. The shards of wood taken from it have given us incredible power. Now the people will not doubt our connection to God. We will show them miracles such that they have never seen before. All the stories have spread of my fending off of the demon attack. More will come, and more will eat. We prepare. The reckoners will have their promised day. John bends over the body of the dead angel. He plucks out the cross from around his neck. In the center of the metal cross is a shard of wood. John says, these angels ain't religious at all. They're devil worshippers. Hitoshi asks, what's a reckoner? Lacey says, never heard the name. I'd guess they ain't good. John says, that shit about making the meat. They're turning the whole damn city into cannibals, but why? Lacey says, well, I've known stories about what happens to men who cannibalize. I've heard testimony that people ain't right after, that they turn monstrous. What the legends call a wendigo. That thing Grimm turned into. It sure matched the stories. John says, but that can't be right. If people have been eating human flesh, then they ought to be turned by now, right? If they really are wendigos, people of the city sure don't seem to be monsters. Christine chimes in from where she searches. It's the Heart of Darkness. My mother used to tell me that it kept our family from transforming into our own form. It kept our people safe from us. These angels are using it to feed the people without the side effect. Lacey says, I don't think it's quite that altruistic. The diary keeps going. It says they corrupted their own crops with the power of the shards. It was to force people to eat the meat. John says, well, that don't make sense. There's something else here we're missing. He moves aside some papers and finds a map with red dots painting across it. Major cities in the Weird West. John's eyes go wide. They've made themselves an army. Christine says, what? John says, think about it. With the Heart of Darkness, they can transform a normal group of people into monsters whenever they like. They could infiltrate any city with people that look normal and act normal. The people wouldn't even have to know what they were. And whenever the angels wanted to, they could unleash monsters. They're planning to invade the east with an army hidden in plain sight. Lacey nods slowly. He says, this is what Cassandra was trying to warn me about. She alluded to some sort of big plan, but I never understood. No wonder the angels are willing to kill to hide this information. Christine looks at another bookcase. She scans the titles until she finds one she knows. It's the same one she took from her childhood home, only this one is new and clean. She grabs it and pulls it off the shelf. We hear a pop and a hiss. The other bookshelves slide apart and reveal a hidden room. Sitting on a pedestal inside is the Heart of Darkness. Christine says, I found it. She slowly walks over and picks it up. She holds it close to her chest. John says, Christine, if we take that, the angels will never stop coming for us. And Christine replies with, if we don't, they use it to invade. Let them come. John nods. He says, let's get out of here. We see them leave the library. We're going to cut back to the dungeon. We see Annabelle is sliced up badly. Blood runs from many wounds, and many of her teeth are gone. She's lost her fingernails. Angel Black stands in front of her with a pair of scissors. They drip with blood. He says, now where are they? I want to know. Annabelle says nothing. She just looks down at her feet and drools. Black says, no answer for me? Annabelle does not reply. Black takes the scissors and removes a finger. We hear her scream. Black says, I'm gonna ask one more time. Then I peel the skin off your foot. Where did they go? Annabelle murmurs something. Black says, what? I can't hear you. Annabelle says, here. They were trying to come here. Through the sewers. Black says, here. To the church. Why? Annabelle says, to steal something from Grimm. A gemstone, they said. That's all I know, I swear. We see the color drain from Black's face. He quickly stands up and leaves the room. He runs down the hall until a guardian angel stops him. We found a dead angel, sir. In the church. Black says, where? About 20 minutes ago. Inside the library, sir. Black says, move. He moves past the man and hurries to the library. He opens the door to where the stone was hidden. It's gone. He says, oh, fuck. He runs out and finds an angel. He yells, gather them in, as many as you can, and bring them to me. I want this city locked down. No one leaves. And get me Guardian Renly. We're going to cut to the outskirts of the city of the Lost Angels. We see the group make their way out of the city. They sneak through the tent city that surrounds the outside perimeter. At last, they reach freedom. Begin to go the way they came, heading back towards Van Horn's light. Christine pulls out the Heart of Darkness and fiddles with it. John looks over her shoulder as she plays with it. He asks, how does it work? Christine says, I don't know, but I think this will tell me. She hands John the heart and pulls out a book from her bag. It's the one from Grimm's library. Christine says, this book translates all the runes inscribed into the heart. With it, I suspect I can understand how the power of the stone works. John says, uh-huh. Look, Christine, I know we talked about it before, but now that you have the heart, what do you say you and I start over? Travel together like the old days. Truth is, I've missed you. This journey just reminded me how much. Christine smiles and says, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. We see the posse of angels all armed to the teeth. They follow Black. Angel Renly is among them. They approach the sewer entrance the group entered through the previous night. Black bends over and finds a fresh set of footprints. Black says, they've already left. Renly says, if I may, sir, I know where they'll go. I overheard that ghost eye fella say it in Tombstone. Black says, spit it out. Renly says, a place called Van Horn's Light. All I know is they're meeting there. Black says, then we ride for Van Horn's Light. Be it upon your head if you're wrong. We're going to cut to the maze. We see the party climbing over a rope bridge onto a new mesa. They climb up a set of stairs carved into the mesa. From it, they have a great view of the whole maze. We see the shattered plateaus and islands that make up the maze. The city of the Lost Angels is in the distance. Lastly, we see Van Horn's Light. Lacey O'Malley stops to study something in the distance. He pulls out a pair of binoculars from his bag. He says, we've been followed. John says, what? Let me see. Lacey hands John the binoculars. John looks through them. We can see a group of 6 or 7 angels riding on horseback. John says, they're too close. And on horseback. We won't make it to Ghost Eye. They'll run us down. Christine says, we'll make a stand. Hitoshi says, there are too many of them. We would die. John says, not necessarily. You all would. But me, I might stand a chance. If you weren't here, I could unleash hell. Christine says, no, John. We don't split up. That's not an option. John says, it is. It's the only option. I can do this. Christine says, you can't. And John says, I'm tired of running from these bastards. They owe me blood. For Nick. They're gonna pay it. I'll be fine. I promise. Christine says, I don't believe you. Lacey says, we don't have time for this. They're gaining on us. John says, Christine, I swear to you, I'm gonna kill them. And when you look to that sunset from the lighthouse, you'll see me riding, silhouetted against fire. And you'll know I won. I ain't lost a bet yet. Christine shakes her head. I won't leave you again. John says, I know, but Hitoshi will make you. Christine turns and sees Hitoshi take a step towards her. Her eyes are filled with sorrow. He grabs her and starts to drag her off. She tries to fight him, but Hitoshi is a strong warrior. His grasp stays tight. Christine says, no, don't make me. Don't leave him. Hitoshi whispers in her ear, I'm sorry, little wolf. Hitoshi spares one final look for John. The two exchange nods of respect, finally seeing each other eye to eye for the first time. John and Christine look at each other as well. John smiles and draws a card. He flashes her an ace. The music swells as we see tears in Christine's eyes as she vanishes deeper into the maze. John turns to the horizon where the angels approach on horseback. He lights a cigar and smokes it while he waits for them to arrive. It doesn't take long before they're on him. They spread around him and form a circle, surrounding him entirely. Black says, "You know him, Renly?" Renly says, "Yeah, he's John Weber." Black says, "Oh, the gambler. Where's the heart of darkness? Give it to me and you're a free man. I promise. We only want the stone." John says, "I would, except for the fact that that man there carved a cross into the chest of my best friend." John points to Guardian Renly. John says, "Nicholas Goldman. Sound familiar?" Black says, "Well," and turns to look at Renly expectantly. Renly nods and says, "I killed him. He colluded with you, a devil worshipper." John says, "You strung him up for being a devil worshipper, and yet you're devils yourselves. I saw what you are firsthand. Tell me why." Black nods and says, "For the same reason as all of it. Fear." John says, "Well, I'm going to make you fear me. I'm going to take the lives of each and every one of you. Then I'm going to burn your city to the ground." John draws a card at his waist. It's the 9 of diamonds. Soon other cards begin to float around him. They glow with a green energy. And for the first time we get the kind of game's appearance of the floating cards visual. I really wanted to work it in here. John says, "I drew a whole hand for this." Black smiles. "How magnificent. You really are a true gambler. I've never seen one of you before. This'll be fun." A standoff begins as the angels and John stare each other down. The cards still float in the air around him. An angel makes the first move. He pulls his pistol and fires at John. The bullets hit an invisible wall and fall to the earth. A 3 of hearts floating around John vanishes. John plucks a 5 of spades from the air and fire erupts from it. It consumes 2 of the angels in a plume of flames. The other 3 angels spring into action. One pulls out a shotgun and fires on John's shields. The pellets stop midair, but another card is burned. We see Black bend to a knee. He only watches the fight with a smile on his face. We see Renly touch his cross. A ball of white light forms there and then fires into John. It explodes across the invisible wall. This time 2 cards burn away. John quickly plucks one out of the air and hurtles it towards Renly. It hits him and explodes in a ball of fire. Renly is no more. The angel who just shot the shotgun throws it aside. We see him pull a knife and charge John. John catches the hand of the angel, keeping the knife away from his face. With his other hand, he reaches and grabs a 4 of clubs. He holds it up, and lightning arcs off it, straight into the angel's face. We see the angel's head explode. John snatches the knife from his hand just as the last angel shoots him with the revolver. It's caught by his shield, but his last floating card vanishes. John throws the knife into the angel's chest, killing him. John slowly turns towards Black, out of breath. Black claps. John says, "I killed your angels." Black says, "I found it genuinely impressive. I think your only fault is that you need cards." Before John can react, Black throws a knife, and it lands straight in John's newly defenseless hand. All of the playing cards fly out of it and fall to the floor. John quickly pulls the pistol from his holster with his other hand. "I don't need cards to kill you." He fires a bullet to Black's stomach. You can see straight through Black's body as a large hole is punched into his gut. Black begins to laugh, a sinister cackle. "So much spirit. But you made a few mistakes. I ain't human." He looks past John. Black says, "And my men ain't all dead." We hear a gunshot, and blood begins to seep from John's chest. We see Angel Renly holding a pistol where he lays on the ground. Half his body is charred and burned, and blood runs from his mouth. Smoke curls from his freshly fired gun. John collapses to the ground. Black slowly approaches. He kicks the gun out of John's hand as John tries to raise it for a second shot. Black says, "You put up a good fight. You're like me, a killer. Hell's gonna love you. Trust me, I'd know." John tries to say something in reply, but he can't. He coughs up blood. "What, cat's got your tongue?" Black asks. "I'll tell your girl you said bye." We see Black walk towards the horse, leaving John to die on the stone. We see John's eyes drift towards a single card, laying face down near his arm. It's half covered in his own blood. John manages to crawl towards it. He can save them. He can heal himself and beat this bastard. He grabs the card and flicks it. The smiling face of the Joker greets him. The world around him is plunged into a sudden reddish darkness. We hear a sinister voice whisper to him. John Weber, that makes 3. You've drawn your last hand. We see a shadowy monster climbing John's body. It pulls itself from the ground with razor-sharp claws. They dig into John's flesh, leaving gashes everywhere they touch. It pulls itself until it's face-to-face with John. It runs the claw down his face, slicing it all the way open. It snarls words in an almost monstrously inhuman voice as John screams, "Your soul is mine!" We hard cut to John's dead body. His face is uncut, but blood runs from his eyes and nose. He's drawn his last card. We hear the song Curse of the Fold by Sean James as the camera focuses on the bloody Joker in John's dead hand. In the distance, out of focus from the card, we see Angel Black riding off. He's going after the others to recover the stolen Heart of Darkness. And that's where we're going to end it. Big twists all around. Shorter episode than the other ones, but it features a lot of action, which I figure would have padded the episode had I actually filmed it. And we're going to have the next episode out sooner than this one, I promise. And I'll go ahead and tease, the last episode is called The Sunset, and we'll end this season of the Deadlands show.
Oh man, killing your own brother sure is thirsty work. That was a pretty good episode. I killed the protagonist. I do that because I'm a gamer. I don't know. I'm a bad guy. I'm a little risque even. You know, I do things traditional Hollywood writers won't. And Will is really dead, by the way. He's never coming back. I shot his ass. I buried him in a shallow grave. FBI, you can't know where I am right now. That's not happening, all right? And if you don't like and subscribe, I'll come for you too. I don't think I won't. You've seen what I'm capable of. Hi, I'm Bjorn, and welcome back to the Wild West. I'm here in the Wild West, where I really am. No green screen. Don't believe anyone who tells you about green screens. Green screens are a lie. They don't exist in 1888 or whatever the hell this is set. So, you know what? I don't want to hear it, alright? No more talk of green screens. I've seen you idiots in the comments always telling me about my green screen this and green screen that, and frankly, I'm done with it, alright? If I hear one more comment about green screens, I'm going to be a little upset, alright? I'm going to be a tiny bit peeved off, alright? I won't like it, frankly. I'm not going to be happy about it. So this is the final episode. I'm finally done. My God, I no longer have to write fun Wild West stories. I can go back to writing superhero schlock. We're done, baby. Let's just get into it. You know what? Let's just go right into the script.
Hey guys, just a quick reminder, this is episode 6, the literal finale of a huge television series I wrote. So if you haven't watched episodes 1 through 5, I would highly recommend going back and watching those. I guess you could try to watch this without that knowledge, but it's going to be an incoherent mess. So I would not recommend doing that. Alright, I'm calling episode 6, The Sunset. We open on a young John Weber sitting on the floor of his house. He has a copy of Hoyle's Book of Games in his hand. We see a bunch of unlit candles are scattered around the room in a circle. We see John read a passage from the book aloud. The best way to gamble is under the candlelight. That is if you want a joker. The candles open the way. We see John light the series of candles around the room. The firelight from their flickering flames cast odd shadows across his face. He keeps reading from the notes etched into his book aloud. Offer a game. The jokers love to gamble. To truly get their attention, you have to be willing to play for high stakes. Perhaps the highest there is. Remember, they will always gamble. You can use this against them. John turns and looks towards the candles. He opens up a pack of cards and lays them flat on the floor. John says, I'm willing to play. I bet my soul. In the flickering candlelight amid the smoke, the faint shadow of what could be a man appears. It's blurry and unclear, but there's something not quite right to its form. Something you can't quite put your finger on. The Joker whispers, You want to play, boy? I'll play. What's your game? John says, Poker. What are you willing to bet? The Joker says, Power. John nods and deals a hand out. We see the Joker's cards levitate on their own, moved by some unseen force. They play out the hand. When it comes time to reveal their cards, John lays down a pair of kings. He says, "A pair of kings." The Joker says, "All junk. You win the hand." It scatters its cards across the floor. We see it did in fact have a junk hand. The Joker says, "As I promised, power. For every card you draw from this deck, power will be yours. But draw a Joker." A single Joker card levitates into the air. "And your soul is mine." You like to gamble. Now you can. "I want 2, John says. 2 Jokers. 2 chances." The Joker smiles. It says, "The man on whose body you found that book had only 1. Why should I give you 2? John says, "Because I'll play you for it. Another round. Double or nothing." The Joker laughs with joy. "Oh, you are a gambler. I like that. Fine. Double or nothing." John deals another hand. We watch them play it out again. John looks over his cards. He has only a single ace in his deck. Ace high. He could win, but it's unlikely. He lets the quickest nervous look show on his face. He covers it with a poker face as soon as he realizes what he's done. John says, "I raise." The Joker says, "With what? You've already gambled your soul." John says, "How about pain? You like pain, right?" The Joker laughs. "You are interesting. A real brave young man, unaware of what he truly offers. What must I raise in exchange?" 3 Jokers. John shows 3 fingers. "You raise 3 Jokers." The Joker in the center of the candles laughs. "Then I fold. All junk here." It tosses its cards face down on the floor. It says, "Very well, John Weber. 3 Jokers. That's the best offer anyone's ever gotten from me." 3 ethereal floating Joker cards appear in the air. They vanish when the Joker snaps. "Our deal is struck. Your cards have my power." We see the cards on the table begin to glow. The demon John summons vanishes. We see John Weber gather up his cards. He flips the Joker's hand. It's a royal flush. A perfect winning hand. We see confusion on John's face. The question on his mind is plain on his face. Why did it fold? We smash cut to John's dead body in the present. His eyes are wide open, cold and dead. We see a fly walk across his eye. The camera pans out until we can see a bloody Joker laying on the ground. His last card was finally drawn at last. The pain he promised, paid at last. We're going to cut to the intro of the show. We see Christine, Lacey, and Hitoshi climbing through the maze as tall, meandering mazes. We hear one last gunshot, then nothing. Christine says, "No more gunshots. Maybe John won." Lacey said, "It could mean anything. It could mean he's dead. We don't know." Christine says, "He won. I'm sure." Hitoshi says, "It doesn't change the plan. We make it to Ghost Eye in the lighthouse. It'll be defendable. We can hold the high ground. If it's John who comes, we move on back to Tombstone." We see them move into a cave. Lacey lights up a lantern and leads the way. We see a large crack in the earth running across the cave, leading down into the murky depths of the ocean. Christine says, "Watch your step." She pulls out a lantern of her own and lights it. As they walk, we see abandoned mining equipment everywhere. Ropes run down into the trenches. Christine says, "What is all this?" Lacey says, "The leftovers of ghost rock miners, I reckon. The vein must have run dry, so they left." Hitoshi says, "They mined down that trench?" Lacey says, "If there was a vein, then yes. I've seen miners use scaffolding and ropes before." Hitoshi says, "Lunacy." Lacey says, "Desperation. The people who came here think they have nothing to lose." Hitoshi shines his light on the wall, and we see a vein of white rock. Some small amounts of white mist creep off it. Hitoshi says, "They left some ghost rock behind." Lacey says, "What? That can't be right." Lacey turns to look. Christine takes a step, and we hear a crunch. She lowers her lantern, and we see a human femur cracked beneath her foot. All around it are scattered piles of bones. Christine says, "Bones." Hitoshi says, "What?" He lowers his lantern, and we see bones around his feet too. Suddenly, we hear a strange hissing sound. We see Lacey quickly shove his lantern above his head, illuminating the ceiling. We see a few small, strange, reptile insect-like creatures clinging to the ceiling. They begin to move, crawling towards the group. Christine pulls a rifle and shoots one in the head. It falls to the floor dead. In the muzzle flash, We see the cave illuminated for a frame. The creatures fill the cave, clung to almost every wall. Hitoshi slices one in two with a swing from his sword, and Lacey shoots one with his pistol. Hitoshi yells, "Run!" We're going to cut to Angel Black. We see him climbing the mesas. He's following their footprints in the dirt. He comes to the entrance of the cave, and we hear gunshots from inside. Black smiles. He says, "I found you," out loud. He touches the cross on his chest and enters the cave. We're going to cut back to the cave. We see the group rushing through the cave. Lacey leads, holding out his lantern. He occasionally turns and fires a shot at the insects. Christine continues to fire her rifle, knocking insects off the wall. In each muzzle flash, we can see them growing closer. Christine asks, "What in the hell are they?" Lacey says, "Wall crawlers. I've heard tales of them hiding in the shadows waiting for ambush, and I've seen a few dead specimens. I've never heard of anything like this. They don't like the light. They must have bred like crazy in the cave." Ahead, we can see the exit of the cave. Light flows from it. A wall crawler leaps towards Christine with its jaws open and claws out. Hitoshi takes its head off with his sword before it can reach them. Another one leaps out, and Christine shoots it dead with her rifle. She spins it, cocking the lever action in one fluid motion, then shoots another one. They reach the light and dive out of the cave. They come into the light of day on the other side of the mesa. A small rope bridge leads across a canyon. We can see the lighthouse rising high above in the air, only a mile or so away. We see a few of the creature's legs trying to reach out of the cave. They touch the light and immediately recoil back. Their eyes reflect in the entrance of the cave, lighting up the darkness. They don't seem to leave, and they eventually crawl back into their cave. Lacey says, "Holy hell, we're so close. We may actually make it." He looks towards the lighthouse. We can see smoke from a fire, and Ghost Eye's still there. Suddenly, we hear echoing footsteps from the cave. They all turn. Christine pulls her rifle back off her shoulder and levels it at the cave. It shouldn't be possible for anyone to be there. A lone figure in a hat becomes visible in the shadows of the cave. Christine makes an assumption. Her face lights up with relief. She says, "John!" Angel Black steps into the light. There's a sinister cast to his eyes. He's come to kill. Christine's own eyes fall. He says, "No, I'm afraid not. Your gambler's dead. I killed him myself and left him to rot." Christine cries, "You're a goddamn liar." Black says, "Believe what you will. I watched him die like a dog, in the dirt where his sort belongs. When I send you to hell, no one will be left to mourn him." Christine's lips turn to a snarl. She fires 3 shots right into Black's chest in quick succession. We see the shells hit the floor, tinking against the stone. Black only laughs. We see 3 holes in his shirt and duster. Christine says, "What are you? You're not like the others." Black says, "I am Death, the Grim Reaper, taker of souls and swift hand of hell. You have something that belongs to me. I want it back. Hand it over and I might just spare you. I only want the heart of darkness." Christine says, "I can't do that. It was mine before you angels took it. My birthright." Black and Christine enter a sort of standoff. Black watches her with an amused look on his face. He's toying with them, enjoying his hunt. We see Hitoshi with one hand on his sword. We hear its whispering in his head. The demon in the sword whispers, "She will not win. You can feel it too, the anticipation of death. Will you let her blood flow to the ground? Let the birds feast on her eyes and her flesh? Or will you unseal me? Release me and I can save her." The demon in the sword is trying its hand again. It wants to be free. Hitoshi says, "No," under his breath. The demon whispers, "She'll die slowly. You'll see." Its laughs fill Hitoshi's mind. They fade away as the camera focuses on Christine again. She says, "You know, you reminded me of something. The stone has power. I can use it." Black's smile grows wider. "That other angel said you were something wrong. He was right. The sin of evil oozes off you like the stench of a corpse. You're like me. Go on. Use it." Christine begins to twist the runes around the stone using her knowledge she studied from the book. She clicks it into place. Her body begins to twist and contort. We see her skin rip apart as hair grows across her body. She grows larger and claws grow from her fingers. The heart of darkness falls to the floor and rolls in front of Lacey, who snatches it. She's fully transformed into a werewolf. She howls loudly and it echoes off the mesas and canyons. She used the stone to force her transformation, doing the opposite of what the angels have been doing with it, which is, maintaining a transformation. Black says, Ah, magnificent. A werewolf. A rare thing in the West. Old magic. Dangerous, but flawed. He lets his coat fall to the floor. The werewolf charges him. It scratches a gash across his chest and throws him into the wall of the canyon. It howls again. We see Black casually stand. A scratch mark is torn into his chest, but he doesn't even seem to feel it. He reaches up and pulls the cross from around his neck free. He tosses it across the stones and it clatters to a stop. Black says, "How freeing it is to wear our true forms." His body begins to twist too. Deer antlers grow from his head, and his body becomes lanky, broken, and gray. Claws like long knives grow from his hands. He's transformed into a Wendigo. There's a raw, primal anger in his eyes. The werewolf runs at the Wendigo and tackles it. Real fast, I just want to bring up, when I went down to write this, I realized I had an opportunity to have a werewolf fight a Wendigo. A fight I never knew I wanted to see until I started writing this, and I was like, well, fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. That's the kind of campy stuff I think this franchise can do, and I was like, I definitely have to do that. So we're going to get a Wendigo werewolf fight. It's basically the new Godzilla versus King Kong. The werewolf runs at the Wendigo and tackles it. They fall to the floor of the canyon in a blur of claws. The werewolf tears slices viciously into the Wendigo's flesh, but the wounds seem to heal on their own. The werewolf tries to scratch again, but the Wendigo catches its arm. Its claws dig into the flesh of the werewolf's hands. It uses its arms to lift the werewolf up while looking it in the eyes through its skull. They begin to fight again, dodging and slicing at each other. Every wound inflicted on the Wendigo heals, but the same is not true for Christine's werewolf form. Soon the wolf is bloody. Lacey says, "She's losing," to Hitoshi. Hitoshi says nothing but looks concerned. We hear the blade speak to him again as we see the werewolf and the Wendigo fighting in the background. The demon whispers, "It's a Wendigo, a creature of hell. She won't be able to hurt it, but I can. Draw my power. Unbind me." Hitoshi says, "No, never." We see Lacey look at him nervously, confused as to what he's talking about. We see the Wendigo sink a claw into the werewolf's shoulders. The wolf takes its arm off at the wrist, and the Wendigo howls in pain. It steps back and holds its arm out, and a new hand quickly grows to replace the old one. It rushes forward and slices the wolf across the chest. The werewolf stumbles back and howls. I'll say they fight for a little bit longer. The werewolf fights like an animal, vicious with no thought, and the Wendigo fights more like a boxer. It dodges and counterattacks. It keeps its intelligence. Black is still in there, and the werewolf is no match. The Wendigo picks it apart relentlessly, using form to beat raw power. Soon the werewolf is covered in blood, head to toe. It flows to the ground below, coating it red. The Wendigo scores a slash across its face, and the werewolf falls to the ground, covered in blood. The Wendigo picks it up and throws it up against one of the walls hard. The werewolf hits and falls to the floor. It then transforms back into Christine, who's now bloodied. Her eyes meet Hitoshi's. They're filled with fear as she passes out. We see tears in Hitoshi's eyes. The Wendigo's mouth begins to drip with drool. It lumbers towards her and begins to giggle to itself in a sinister, unhinged way. It sounds almost human, but not quite right. Wendigo Black says, "I expected more. Just like the gambler. A disappointment." The camera focuses on Hitoshi. He shuts his eyes and mutters a curse in Japanese. He pulls his blade free in a quick motion and slices his thumb on the blade. He runs the cut thumb down the length of the sword, smearing it with blood. In Japanese, he says, "I release you." We hear the demon's laughter from the blade. The katana seems to drink the blood. Red lines run across its surface like cracks of blood. Each sprouts off into tiny little clawed hands that climb Hitoshi's arms. They look just like the ones that killed John Weber when he drew the Joker. They begin to climb Hitoshi's arm, digging into his flesh as they do. They sink into his arm and stay connected with the sword, almost like mystical cables. They climb all the way up his shoulder. Red mist seems to flow off the blade. Hitoshi swings the sword in the air and a blast of energy is sent flying. It takes the Wendigo's arm off as it reaches for Christine. This time, it doesn't grow back. The Wendigo snarls in pain and confusion. It turns towards Hitoshi with murder in its eyes. It snarls, "You! I'll kill you!" The Wendigo charges Hitoshi with incredible speed. Its claws lash out for a strike. Hitoshi steps aside, dodging the attack. He quickly moves his sword down, slicing a gouge into the Wendigo's chest. The Wendigo lets out another shrill scream. "How dare you!"
Hitoshi stares him down and never blinks. Red is beginning to fill his eyes. Something sinister, something evil. He raises his sword, preparing for either attack or defense. This time, the Wendigo does not charge recklessly. It limps around Hitoshi, looking for a weak point. Hitoshi pivots, keeping the creature within view. Finally, the Wendigo attacks. It manages to leave a cut on Hitoshi's shoulder. In exchange, Hitoshi carves a gash across its chest with his sword. It's a deep wound, and it fills the Wendigo with blood. Once again, the Wendigo screeches in pain. It recoils back, trying to retreat. Hitoshi follows with his sword ready for a killing strike. The Wendigo backs up until it reaches the edge of the cliff. We can see the ocean far below. Waves crash against the cliff face. The Wendigo snarls, "I am death! I am the Grim Reaper! Your soul belongs to hell!" It tries one final attack. Hitoshi catches the monster's claws on his sword. He spins the blade around and takes the Wendigo's head off. Its body falls over the cliff into the ocean below. We see a maze dragon rise its serpentine head out of the water. It snatches the body with its mouth. The last piece of Angel Black is swallowed by the maze, the very place that created him. We hear the cackling of the sword demon. "Hitoshi, you are weak after all, just like your brother. Didn't the power feel incredible?" Hitoshi says, "I banish you. Return to the blade." The red tendrils begin to be pulled back into the sword. The demon whispers in frantically, "It is already done. You broke the seal of honor. I have my claws in you. I am free." Hitoshi slams the sword back into its scabbard. The demon's cackling and words vanish. The red in his eyes retreats. He falls to a knee, staring out over the cliff. We see the maze dragon swimming out into the ocean. Lacey asks, "What was that?" Hitoshi says, "The power of the Oni bound within my blade by my ancestors. I broke my oath and freed it." He stands unsteadily to his feet. He walks to Christine. She's still breathing. He moves some of her hair aside affectionately and checks her pulse. We see him let out a sigh of relief. Lacey asks, "Why didn't you use that sword sooner? We could have used that." Hitoshi says, "I swore on my honor, on my family's name, that I would never use its power. But she is my daughter." He looks down at Christine again. "The only family I have. I could not let her die." Lacey says, "Well, you did the right thing." Hitoshi says, No, I didn't. There will be a cost." Lacey says nothing. He just looks towards the lighthouse. Hitoshi says, "When she wakes, don't tell her what happened here. Let her think she killed it. Please." Lacey nods. "I reckon I can do that," he says. Hitoshi says, "Thank you." He picks Christine up and begins to limp towards Van Horn's light. We're going to cut to John's body. We see it laying in the same position as before. A buzzard lands next to him and plucks out his eye, which I know that's a gross visual, but that is actually something that vultures do. Birds swarm around his body. We see Grim approach John's body on horseback. A few buzzards spook off as he arrives. Strangely, John's body looks nearly untouched by the birds, except for his eyes, which are both gone. Another angel rides up. The angel says, "You want us to take him back? The meat's still good. He's not been dead long." Grim says, "Not this one. His meat is tainted. Let the birds have him, if they will." Suddenly, we hear a loud cawing of a raven. Grim turns and we see a single raven standing on a rock. It looks at him. It hops once and caws again. Grim says, "Leave me." The angel says, "Sir, it's not safe. The thieves could still be here." Grim says, "I said leave. Now." The angel grows pale and rides off on his horse into the distance. When he's out of sight, we hear another raven. Grim turns and sees another on the opposite side of him. There's a third caw in the air. Another raven appears. As the camera pans around Grim turning, we see a man appear out of nowhere. He's dressed in all black and wears a black hat. His skin is dry and cracked, but not from the sun. It's almost as if he's been mummified. His sunken eyes reflect silver like a predator in the night, even in this daylight. He says, "Grim," in a voice as sinister and deep as a voice can be. As soon as he hears the voice, Grim goes stiff. He slowly turns. "Stone! I wasn't expecting you so soon." Stone says, "You lost the heart of darkness. I already know." Grim says, "I can find it." Stone says, "You won't. They grow disappointed in you, Grim."
You lost the stone, and what are you without it?
Grim says, I am of use. The lost angels will follow me. Even still, I'll convince them that this change is God's will. I'll make them believe. I'll make them think of themselves as angels. Stone says,
I am aware of your silver tongue. Use it. Your life hangs in the balance.
Stone moves his skeletal hands and runs them along the pistols at his waist.
Lose control of them, and I will find you.
Grim says, what am I to do with them?
Stone says, spread fear. Take your followers to the east. Let the good people of the west see the horror that awaits humanity. Fulfill our purpose.
Grim says, it will be done. What of the ones who took the stone? Stone turns and looks at him. There's hate in his eyes. He says,
I'm handling them personally. We've left too many rats in the barn. I'm going to change that. I'll tie up your loose ends, Grim.
Grim starts to laugh nervously. It's a laugh that's filled with fear. I pity them. They'd have been better off with me. Stone doesn't reply. He turns and starts to walk away. Grim asks, is that it? Stone says,
you better pray that it is. Gain control of your followers. I won't warn you twice.
The ravens caw, and Stone vanishes. As soon as he does, the birds fly away in different directions. Grim's left alone. He falls to his knees shaking and lets his breath out. He's never been more terrified in his life. He mutters,
oh hell.
We're going to cut to Van Horn's light. We see Christine wake up in a bedroll next to a fire. It's nearing sunset as dusk falls. She sits up and looks over, and we see Hitoshi. He stares at his sword, which is on the ground in front of him. In the background, we can see Van Horn's light. Hitoshi's face is deep in thought. Christine asks, Hitoshi, what happened? He looks up and smiles when he sees her awake.
You won.
After the fight, you collapsed. We carried you back here. Hitoshi tosses her the Heart of Darkness. She catches it and examines the runes. She slides a few into different positions, returning it to the state before she transformed into a werewolf. Christine asks, what about John? Hitoshi just shakes his head, but he looks skeptical. He thinks John's dead. Christine says, he'll come. You'll see. Hitoshi's eyes soften. He says, Ghost Eye says we'll be leaving as soon as the sun sets. Christine stands and walks towards the edge of the mesa. Hitoshi follows her. We can see the sun is starting to set. Christine says, you'll see, Hitoshi. He's coming. He promised me. And he'd never lie. Not to me. He's going to be right there. She points towards the sunset. We see the sun slowly setting, casting brilliant reds and oranges across the skies. We see Christine and Hitoshi silhouetted against the sunset. As the sun sets completely, we see the last of Christine's hopes for John's silhouette on the horizon fade away. He doesn't come. He really is gone. All of her denial slides away. It hits her like a train. Tears flow in her eyes. He said he'd come. He promised, she whimpers. The moon begins to rise behind them, casting solemn blue light. The lighthouse light begins to sweep back and forth as it turns on. In its light, we can see Christine's hollow, broken eyes. She's completely gutted. She whispers, it was my fault. I brought him. Me. Hitoshi shakes his head.
No, you can't blame yourself, little wolf.
He came on his own. Christine says, he came for me. I always hurt everyone around me. It wasn't worth it. I should have never come here. He was right. I'd give it all up to have him back. She throws the Heart of Darkness at the ground in anger. It rolls and stops a few feet away, unharmed. Christine says, it was for him, so we could be together. So I knew I wouldn't hurt him. What's the point of it now? Hitoshi hugs her and she sobs into his shoulder. She says, I loved him. And Hitoshi says, I know. The camera pulls back as the song, Oh Darling, What Have I Done by the White Buffalo plays. We're going to cut to the city of Lost Angels. We see a sequence of people beginning to transform into Wendigos in the streets. The Heart of Darkness is gone, and its power is no longer keeping them from transforming. We see a few Wendigos killing their own family members and other people who hadn't eaten the meat and haven't transformed. Eventually, when the killing's done, they wander aimlessly. Even through their inhuman appearance, we can see how broken they are on the inside. They didn't want to kill. They don't want to be hungry like they are. Soon the angels appear and lead the sad broken creatures towards the church. The angels haven't transformed. They've maintained their human appearance. The Wendigos follow them willingly, almost as if they remember those that they used to worship. In front of the church, we see Grimm standing in his priest outfit. He begins a speech, yelling so the crowd can hear.
I know how you feel. The hunger, the drive to kill. That is the message of God. He's telling you to consume the men outside his city, to consume the sinners. We are his chosen, and he gave us his power. We are revelations. We are the rapture that will purge this country of sin.
As he gives his speech, we see Hope Springs. The Sheriff Leonard from episode 3 walks the streets. We see a raven appear, and then another one. 2 more appear. Finally, the sheriff notices them and studies them. Suddenly, Stone appears out of nowhere in front of him. He pulls one of the pistols on his waist. He puts a bullet into the sheriff's chest. We see this strange white smoke oozing from his gun barrel. It seems to have the faces of screaming people in the smoke. It's the same as the one Ghost Eye uses. The sheriff takes 2 steps back and falls to the dirt. Instead of focusing on the dying sheriff, we focus on Stone. He pulls a list from his duster and marks off the sheriff's name. He slides a finger down and sees next on the list is Ghost Eye Morrison. Stone skips it, crossing it off. The next name after that is Christine Moon. We cut back to the sheriff. We see him choking on his own blood as he dies. The blood forms a halo around him. By the time the camera moves back, Stone is already gone. We cut back to the Reverend as he finishes his speech.
We will go east to where the sinners breed like rats. We will tear them down like Sodom and Gomorrah. We will salt the very earth they walk, and you will feast. That I promise. And when we do, your hunger from God will be satiated.
The creatures in the audience give inhuman cheers with excitement. Grimm has control of them. We see him let out a slight sigh of relief. Even still, he's terrified of Stone. We see a shot of the city from above, and hundreds of Wendigos pour out into the unsuspecting west. They go to feed, to spread fear. All on the orders of someone we don't understand. We're going to cut to the maze. We see a shot of the full moon over the cracked mesas of the maze. The camera slowly moves down until we see John Weber's body. The camera moves up his bloody and torn clothes to his face. It's pale and lifeless. Suddenly, his eyes open, even though we saw the birds eat them. But they aren't his. They reflect silver just like stones. He takes a deep, rasping breath and wheezes. It sounds creepy and unnerving. He sits up and coughs. He pulls open his shirt and looks down. We see a bullet hole in his flesh. We can see a look of confusion in his eyes. He awkwardly stands to his feet and begins to shamble away. We see a shot of him silhouetted against the moon. It's full. We follow him stumbling through the desert until we can see Van Horn's light. As its light sweeps by him, his eyes glow even brighter silver. John works his way up to the base of the lighthouse. A fire crackles in a makeshift camp. No one sits on the stones arranged around it. John asks in a rasping voice, "Christine." A deep voice answers from behind him. "No, boy. She's gone. 5 months back." John turns and we see Ghost Eye emerge from the darkness. He lowers his pistol and slides it back into his holster. He sees John's eyes and grimaces. "You should sit." He gestures to the rocks by the fire. John says, "What? Where? What happened?" Ghost Eye says, "You're harrowed, boy. Like me." Ghost Eye carefully slides away his eye patch, revealing a reflective silver eye. And I've got to mention a quick retcon. In the earlier episodes, I said it was like a yellow cat's eye, and that was because I hadn't quite settled on what I wanted the Harrow to look like in my interpretation. They're described as having unusual eyes in the original text, but I hadn't settled on it, so I'm changing it to this sort of silver reflective look. I think it's creepier than the yellow, like, Witcher eyes. So just pretend that they were like that when in the previous episode. It flashes silver in the firelight. Ghost Eye says, "Now sit. We have a lot to talk about." And that is the end of what I will call Season 1, because I do plan on making a second season, which I will title City O' Gloom. It won't be what you're probably expecting. It will be a continuation of this, but it might be something more akin to an anthology. I think you'll see when I get to it, but it's probably going to be a while for that. That being said, if y'all stick to the end of this video, I will have a teaser for my next television series, because I'm trying to keep at least a movie and a television series going at all times on my channel. So since I'm not doing Deadlands Season 2, I need to do a different television show. So if you watch to the end of my outro, you'll see a little teaser.
Alright, well, that's it. I am doing a season 2, so I'm actually not done writing cowboy schlock. I am still doing that kind of schlock, in addition to all the other kind of schlock I write, which is a lot of schlock. I mean, we got a schlockaholic over here, and his name is Bjorn. I did promise a teaser for my next thing, so I'm going to just lean back here in the Wild West and play my brand new PlayStation 5, which they have in the Wild West now, because the franchise I'm doing is in fact a video game. I've not done a video game yet, so this should be pretty exciting. And as one last hint, I've got a nice real canvas bag here. This bag is made from genuine canvas, real finely sourced canvas. And that's your hint. For those who know, you know. But the next franchise is a video game, and this is a real canvas bag. That might seem unrelated, but I mean, hey, I'm not the one who has to figure out what I'm writing next. I'm just the guy who has to write it. So if you'll watch this to the end, watch the whole series, I thank y'all a bunch. It was kind of a passion project. This is a franchise I have been passionate about and have been wanting to see done in an interesting way for a long time, and it's never been done. I am super excited that I was able to present this to y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you have any predictions for where Season 2 is going at all, or just ideas, let me know, man. Maybe I'll steal them and then not credit you, like the evil producer in a music movie. Who could say? But yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Yada, yada, yada. Outro time.